Our protagonist wakes up in the body of a weakling. He realized that he had stopped in another world. At that moment, a beautiful girl came running toward him. Out of nowhere, she simply hugged him, leaving the boy surprised. Wait a second, why is there a girl hugging me? The kid wasn't understanding anything, but that shameless one got all happy. Why is Big Bro making that weird face? Our protagonist was the son of the Demon King, the most powerful warrior of the demonic realm. And after being betrayed and sent to the human world, he started beating up the bullies who used to pick on this body. However, the boy in whom he reincarnated was too weak and couldn't handle his power, so he began to train. All of this to strengthen and make this body tougher. But what our dear protagonist Lord Rebus didn't know was that the human world was about to be taken over. Several demons had infiltrated that universe, and they were trying to influence the world since they had been banished from the demonic realm. And to blackmail our hero, the demons ended up kidnapping his little sister. But of course, he wouldn't just stand still, and so he promised to destroy all the demons that were in the human world. Only that, to reach that day, we need to go far back in the story also to understand why he was banished to this world. And the worst part, guys, he was banished by his own father, the Demon King. The story begins in a castle of a noble family. Our protagonist named Rebus Vindica had annihilated almost all of its members. The son of the leader asked if Rebus thought he would escape after committing that crime, but the boy said he knew very well that the Hilka family was doing something terribly wrong. In truth, that wasn't a massacre, much less a crime. Everything he was doing was carrying out an order, and in this way he prepared to eliminate the last noble member of that family. However, when he arrived home, the king was waiting impatiently. His father said the boy was supposed to gather evidence of treason, not exterminate an entire house. It seemed the boy had lost his senses, and his father was deeply disappointed, even saying that this time his son had gone too far. And that was Gamunda Vindica, the Demon King. Chained Rebus said that everyone already had the evidence and didn't need to put on this whole show. Since they already knew those people were traitors, he took it upon himself to punish them. Looking at all the counselors, he said that they were all cowards for not punishing that family. One of the counselors was his friend and stared back at him. The king said that there were proper procedures to punish a house, but our hero started laughing, saying that was nonsense. He shouted that darkness can only be swallowed by an even deeper darkness, and that was the law of survival. However, his father disagreed entirely. Defying the Demon King, he said that if his father couldn't see this law of the demonic realm, then he couldn't call himself a king. He even warned his father that it was the nobles who were controlling the order of the kingdom. However, the old man said that his son had a very short-sighted view and was a true fool, and so they kept disagreeing, and our hero thought those people should be killed. But the king insisted that they should first be judged. According to our protagonist, even the counselors had been manipulated by that treacherous family. Upon hearing those accusations, the king couldn't let his son go unpunished. His heir son was hot-headed and stubborn. Thus, the 12 black seats, who were those counselors, decided to punish Rebus Vindica for breaking the laws of the Demon King and massacring Hilka. You will be cast into the human world. Hearing that, our protagonist was already in shock and even asked his father if there wasn't a less harsh punishment, but there wasn't. The human world, his power would be sealed, he would pay for his crimes, and he would have to learn what true dignity meant. The boy begged not to be sent to the human hell and even said he hadn't eliminated the entire bloodline of that family, but the decision of the 12 seats had already been made. They created magic circles to transmigrate him to another world. Among the 12 counselors was his childhood friend, and it was precisely him who ended up touching our hero's face. As they said goodbye, the friend told him he wished him a pleasant stay and with a smile said he would take good care of his things in this world. A bright light of energy began to shine all over his body. Rebus Vindica was sentenced to descend into the world of humans. He would have to live in that body without being able to take his own life. Otherwise, his soul would be erased and he couldn't kill other humans either. And in that way, he woke up in a weak body. He was all sweaty, and when he looked at his hands, he realized where he had ended up. He even started trembling all over. And that's how he realized he had truly come to the human world. Placing his hand on his head, he lamented what had happened and even asked how his friend Bambi had the nerve to mess with him at the moment of farewell. In an unexplainable way, his entire body hurt as if he had been beaten up. When trying to get up, he felt a lot of pain in his back. Besides becoming a human, he had become a completely pathetic human, and instead of regretting having eliminated that clan, he became even angrier. Besides having difficulty breathing, it seemed there was still a stinking stream of sulfur nearby. At that moment, someone opened the door, leaving him completely embarrassed. The big boy looks ahead to see who it was, and a girl begins to cry with flushed cheeks, asking if he had finally woken up. Wait a minute, who is this girl? And why is she hugging me? He even wonders whether that girl might be a blood relative. At that moment, his mother appears, calling him Meho. With tears in her eyes, she was very grateful that he had finally awakened after so long. He even wonders what situation this is, and whether his name is now Meho. He learned since childhood that the human world was one of the 3 great hells and wonders if he will manage to survive. Then, at that moment, someone approaches. It seemed to be his father. He asks whether Meho had woken up. The woman told her husband yes, and that her son was fine, but the man simply responded with a look of contempt and even told Meho to hold his head up and return to classes starting tomorrow. But the woman says that her son is still very weak, since he had been bedridden for over a week. The boy seemed surprised by that man's attitude, while his sister kept asking if he was okay. He didn't know why, but that man emanated a dark aura. And with an excited look, he said that he liked that man because he had a demonic energy. The girl thought her brother was a bit strange and even asked whether he had lost his memory. He didn't know why, but he had liked that man and still had to be careful because his memories had not yet returned. The next day, he ends up going to school. His mother kept yelling from the other side, saying that if he felt unwell, he should tell her. The woman was very worried, for it seemed her son was not well at all. He still didn't quite know what had happened to his body, but it was very humiliating to return to school after so many years. Going to a school was humiliating, but going to a human school was even worse. He was convinced the human world would be horrible, and so he goes to the classroom. Humans, besides being disgusting, barely live to 100 years of age. Since they lived briefly, he would spend only some time in that world and soon return to the demonic world. He had already bought time by destroying the Hiltga clan, since they planned to overthrow the Demon King, and when he returned home he would take his father's throne. Previously, the Vindika royal line had been in danger because of that family. At that moment, some classmates asked if Meho had returned. Since he didn't remember anything, he didn't know who those boys were. And when the boy touched his shoulder, he immediately took a defensive position and even asked himself, how did this body end up defending itself? Was I a coward? At that moment he remembers that he was beaten by those boys, which is why he had been lying in bed for a week. Those boys, they were cruel, even worse than demons. And all that feeling of fear and anguish returned to his mind, and with that Meho he understood everything. Those boys were the reason his body was so sore. The guy ends up slapping our hero's head, asking whether he is not going to pay for his snack. And because he missed a week of class, he would have to pay an extra fee, since he didn't give money during that time. Don't tell me I'm being humiliated by mere disgusting humans. At that moment he remembered the lessons he had in the demonic world about humans. Some students comment that humans are very vulgar because they don't even have horns. The woman says that humans are indeed very vulgar and also says they do everything to hide their own weakness. Moreover, they were disgusting because they worshipped both demons and angels and did so at the same time. Rabis, who is our protagonist, keeps saying that these humans should simply be burned for being so foolish. His teacher agrees, and burning some sort of hologram, she says that when she sees a human she will do the same, she will crush them. And so we return to the present with him being humiliated by those humans' music scum. He tells the blonde kid not to touch that dirty hand. And since the guy didn't understand, he immediately placed his hand on his head. And with surprising force, he crushed the boy on the desk and said he wouldn't let it happen again, that he didn't want those scum to touch that dirty hand on him. One of the bullies starts cursing our protagonist, asking who the hell he thinks he is. And in an inexplicable way, Meho's power had rekindled. The boys even ask how he is so strong since last week he had been beaten up. And the bully comes running toward him, ready to hit him with a punch. But our hero manages to dodge at the last moment. He also realized that those insults ended up reactivating his power again, and after throwing a punch, the boy was thrown to the ground. And the blow was so strong that he slammed into the lockers with everything. His classmates who were watching could not believe what they were seeing. Looking at his own hand, Meho asks if his power shouldn't have been sealed. Even with a frail human body, it seems that the insults end up activating my demonic power. His friend asks if this is the Meho he knew, but the bully already grabs a chair trying to hit him from behind. His friend with glasses shouts that someone is coming from behind, and with shining eyes he simply turns around. His reflexes were sharp and he manages to hit the bully with a kick to the stomach. The blow was precise and the boy began trembling all over in pain, and the boys continued insulting Meho, further feeding his power. Our protagonist said that these humans made things even more vulgar, hiding their own weakness. They were bullies because they were weak. And we already see that the boy is about to get a kick in the face. And that is exactly what happens, making the boy lose consciousness. He became stronger with the insults, because the source of all human malignant desire came from his mother. And in that way he finished off those bullies. Meho had defeated the two class bullies. It seems that not even rabbis believed the human world would be so easy. So father, are you saying I only need to live in this world and then return? He was acting strangely, so much that his classmates found it very odd. And with an evil look, he asks his classmates if there was anyone else who would like to insult him. One of the boys there asks if this really is the Meho from before, and his friend asks when Meho became so strong. He had simply finished off two boys. His friend runs over asking if Meho is okay, and he simply gives a smile. And looking at the boy, he remembers that he even tried to help him, but he was very weak and he knew he was the perfect kind of person who could be used as an attendant. When leaving, his friend was asking how he managed to defeat those two bullies. He even says that it was amazing and it even seemed like he had reincarnated in another world. So my friend, it seems you must have gone to some martial arts world before dying, right? Looking at that insignificant being, he asks how the boy discovered that. Then he remembers a conversation he had with that friend who became one of the 12 counselors, where his friend said that he could not kill humans, otherwise his soul would be erased. Even if humans were insignificant creatures, they could not be killed by demons, otherwise the demons would suffer harm. In other words, the demons were like gods who reigned over death. But that seems a bit hypocritical, since Rabbi says that humans are always trying to kill each other. The __ says it is because humans are foolish and that is why they existed. The demons existed because of humans. Rabbi knew that this was true, but it was a truth a little hard to swallow. Then his friend reminds him that he cannot kill humans. But our hero says that he does not run that risk, because he will never meet the human in front of him. And thus the scene returns to the present with him face to face with the annoying human. He was thinking that his friend had discovered he had reincarnated, but the boy there says that these things are all nonsense. He would also like that to be true, and would like to reincarnate in a fantasy world. Looking at the boy, he can feel all his suffering, and he repeats saying that this thing of reincarnation is complete nonsense and it does not exist. And laughing, he says he knows very well that Miho had been harboring resentment toward those boys for a long time, that it was incredible the time he must have spent training only to do that. But our protagonist finds that disgusting. I'm receiving praise from a human. The scene shifts to a little later. Sitting on the bed, he was trying to understand how his power had returned, since his father had ordered that his power be completely sealed. And clenching his fist, he tries to understand why this was happening, why he was different from the others, and why this kind of power prison was not working on him. And smiling, he imagines what it might be. The big boy thinks it is because his Vindica lineage is without limits and these kinds of ceilings do not work on him, but suddenly his body begins to ache all over. It was probably because of the fight, and since the body was frail, it couldn't withstand his power. With that, he lies down on the bed and trembles in pain, saying that this body is miserable. I only lived as a human for 1 day and I am already feeling the hatred of this miserable body. If I continue at this rate, I won't be able to even close my eyes from so much pain. But time passes and he was already snoring. Thus the scene shifts to the next day and he goes to school again. When leaving, his friend is grateful, because today they did not suffer bullying and were not extorted. But Miho keeps saying that he doesn't care about those bullies and that if he had to fight 10 of them, he would fight with great pleasure. At that moment he hears someone calling his name. He immediately turns around and realizes it was an older bully saying he came for revenge. The guy explains that he can't let Miho go unpunished after beating up his little brother. And our protagonist's four-eyed friend tries to understand whether Miho will run away or not. But our protagonist was all cheerful, saying that he indeed was the Miho who had beaten those bullies, and all excited he starts following those delinquents. It was already getting late, and he keeps following them. The guys end up taking Miho and his friend to a construction site just to beat him up. Amid all the insults, one of them asks what they should do with Miho. If they simply ignored it, their reputation at school would fall. That's why they couldn't let Miho get away with it. And placing his hand on our hero's face, he asks if his mother hadn't taught him not to hit others. And hearing that, our hero gives a small laugh and says yes. His mother taught him, but on the contrary, she taught him to hit arrogant people. Upon hearing this, the bully becomes furious and prepares to strike Miho. The guy really thought he could hit the boy, but because of the insults, he had reactivated his demonic power again. And with that, he began to squeeze the boy's fist tightly. The grip was so strong that the bully began to curse even more. And he thanks his mother because thanks to her power, that blessed humans with that venomous tongue, he lands a punch right on the guy's chin and then prepares several more blows. The guy never expected that frail nerd would unleash a barrage of punches. And meanwhile, Rabus was simply letting out all the anger he had toward humans. Seeing that boy taking a beating, they began to shout even more insults, feeding his demonic power. Even the boy there, Miho's friend, was surprised while getting hit. The guy tells his friends not to just stand there and to help in the fight. So, all of you are coming at me, that will be even better. The greater the evil, the greater the power he would gain, and so he begins defeating them one by one. The boy starts shouting in fear, asking if Miho was someone else. And so he spent a good while beating those bullies. In the end, he stretched out his arm and looked up, laughing. Feeling free, he said that this was very refreshing. His uncle had granted violence to humans and his mother had created the curse, and that's why he was very grateful to both of them. And the boy there was left completely confused. At that moment we see that he was being watched, and it was a little rat with glowing eyes. That was a messenger from the underworld who was spying on Rabus. The ones who were watching said he was doing his role very well, and the one there was his uncle, saying that Rabus was an adorable nephew. And he said that while stepping on a monster's head and feeling pleased that our hero had thanked him for teaching violence to humans. And that friend Bambi says that instead of placing a forbidden seal, at the last moment he embedded a demonic bloodstone. And he did that at the moment he touched our hero's face and says he's waiting to see how long he will endure. Basically, he was conducting an experiment with our hero. They were watching all of it through that rat, and his uncle is surprised that he really managed to exterminate the entire Hiltgad clan by himself. and Bambi says he can only relax when he gets what he wants. Rebus was like that, and the boy's uncle still says that it was very hard to break his stubbornness. And according to the two, the Demon King believed that the only way to deal with a high-level threat was submission through force. That's why they were doing this to Rebus. The human world was where the worst demons were thrown, and he feels proud that his nephew had turned into a criminal of that level. That's why Bambi asks if that's the reason they gave that bloodstone to the boy. Bambi tells Lord Varkan, who is the uncle of our protagonist, that the plans were already ready and they could now hunt the sinners in the human world. Lord Varkan laughs and asks Bambi to show them all, so he performs a spell and an image of those demons who were in the human world appears. And they say that now that Rebus ended up in that world, he will have to face them whether he wants to or not. The Lord stands up and also uses his power. They were basically using our protagonist to hunt down those other sinners. And so they gather great power in their hands. It was still not very clear to us what their real intention was, but his uncle says he was eager for his nephew, because now he would finally face true darkness. The scene cuts to our protagonist together with his friend about to have lunch. The boy there was all excited, saying it felt like he was watching a fight movie. Our hero also really enjoyed beating those boys, but he enjoyed human food even more, although it was very spicy, and the boy says he should have asked for it a little less spicy. At that moment he receives a call, and the contact name saved on his phone was Jinjae. Miho asks whether he will not answer, and sweating cold the boy says he will answer yes. However, it was something very urgent and he needed to leave to take that call. Seeing his friend trembling all over, Miho found that very strange. However, that was none of his business, so he did not insist too much to know. With that, the boy ends up going to a rough place, and inside we see someone getting a tattoo. It was a woman tattooing a man while he screamed, tied to a table. She said that people who did not pay what they owed would have their faces tattooed. And after finishing, she said it was perfect. At that moment she hears someone calling her name and she looks back. Who was there was that boy, friend of our protagonist. And he was trembling all over with fear. With a sinister look she asks why that little doggy was so late and ends up calling him to come there to see what she had done. Upon arriving there she begins to squeeze his face so that he could see well what she had done. She had tattooed on that man's forehead because he owed her, and the words that were written were "filthy little thief." The boy already begins to tremble all over with fear of that happening to him too. And with a sinister look she asks where his promise was and whether he would not fulfill it. Stammering, he does not know very well what to answer. Well, actually, the girl ends up slapping him, throwing the boy to the ground, and asks whether he thinks this is some kind of joke. She still says that he is very stupid and cannot understand a simple order. The girl's henchmen end up holding him and she approaches with that tattoo ink. She said she would engrave "filthy little thief" on his forehead, but the boy kept saying not to do that. However, she was only going to give him one more chance. If he did not soon comply with the agreements, he would not escape. Besides getting a beating, he would end up like those other guys. Therefore, he should do exactly what she was ordering. No mistakes, the scene changed to a little later and we go to that boy's house. What that woman wanted was for him to make a mobile app, but his conscience did not allow it, and if he did not do it, he would be screwed. Therefore, the boy was trapped at a crossroads. Meanwhile, the scene changes to Miho's house. His stomach was hurting a lot because of the spicy food he had eaten earlier. This body was very weak, which is why he was dying of anger. So what he does is simply rip off his shirt and start working out right there in his room. By no means would he let this miserable body debilitate him. If I don't do this, I will be a complete wretch. Early the next day, they returned to school. The four-eyed kid was looking at a device. He had saved his mobile app on that object. If he did not deliver it to that woman, he would be screwed. But he knew that that app was very dangerous, and the only thing that came to his mind was her telling him that the app must have no errors. Okay, if I don't do this, I will die, but if I deliver it to her, other people will be harmed. At that moment, our protagonist touches Simon's shoulder and he screams. He finds that curious. Hey kid, why are you so nervous? Simon knew that Miho was very strong, so he should ask him for help. But he did not want to leave his friend trapped in a mess, so it was better not to involve him in this. Even if he was very strong, he would not be able to deal with Ginja and his henchmen. He could not drag his best friend into such a critical situation. At that moment, wow, he smells something strange and a redhead passes by him. He had already felt that smell before, and now she is ending everything on the floor. Simon knew the little redhead and shouts her name and then runs to see if she was okay. He even asks whether she was hurt and notices at that moment that she was not normal at all, with her mouth salivating and her face strange. It seemed that she was having some kind of convulsion. But upon using his power, Miro realizes it was a demonic energy. One of the teachers asks if she was okay, rushing to help her. After putting her on his back, he tells the other students to get out of the way and runs with her to the infirmary. But Miho ends up recognizing that tattoo. It was the symbol of Hilka, that clan he had exterminated. Therefore, he would have to go after that girl to check. Later, he went to the hospital and looked for the room where that girl was admitted. He prepared to enter there, but a security guard approached him. The woman said that visitors were not allowed to enter there, and he ended up staring at her face, and with his power he granted her forgetfulness. Thus the woman was completely hypnotized and ended up losing consciousness for a few moments. The guy's power was insane and made her sit there outside and stay completely quiet. It seemed that even though his powers were dormant, he was still capable of doing that kind of thing. At that very moment he ended up entering the room, and when looking at the redhead we see that she was awake and doing fine. She even asked who that guy was and what he was doing there, but he said that he was the one who should be asking her that kind of question. But the redhead gets angry, saying that he was the one who invaded her room, and immediately he grabbed the girl's arm, pulling it to see the tattoo. She started screaming, asking what the hell that was. And with his eyes he began analyzing the energy she emanated. Then he asks that redhead why a mere human was carrying the symbol of Hilka. Feeling a bit weakened, she asks why he was doing that. And in a threatening tone he says that if the girl didn't want the worst to happen, she had better open her mouth and start talking, say right now what you really are. Feeling that terrible aura, the girl began trembling in fear and even asked if by chance he was a human. She could feel an evil energy coming from him. He hadn't released her arm and kept squeezing, asking if she would talk or not. With tears in her eyes she said she didn't know anything and said that a woman named Jinjae told her to join a team and get that tattoo, and after that she would give her some diet pills. Our hero was sensing a strange smell coming from that girl and knew he had already smelled that before in the realm of demons. He ends up remembering the past when he was descending a tower along with his friend Bambi. They were still teenagers, and Bambi was scared, saying that area was restricted. But it seemed that Rebis didn't care much about that. He even teased his friend, calling him a coward, leaving him completely irritated. He even said, "Listen here, I'm not scared, I just don't want to break the rules. Alright Bambi, if you're scared you can leave." But the boy starts shouting. After descending many stairs, the boy asks how long they are going to keep going down. After going all the way down they reach a sinister corridor. Bambi asks Rebis if he knew where they were, but our protagonist says that he doesn't really know and asks if the boy there did. The lettuce head keeps saying that this dark place reminded him of something about the story of the eyes that transcended the races. That race lost its ocular power when exposed to too much light or when its vision deteriorated from never seeing anything. At that moment, Rebis tells Bambi to be quiet and also says there's something nearby. They realize it was a lifeless body with a flower. Bambi starts trembling all over, asking what that was. And when his friend starts running, he begins shouting for him to come back because it was too dangerous. In front of them was a very strange flower. They knew that person who had lost their life. And judging by the appearance of the body, it seemed that person had already died some time ago. Her body was already deteriorating, and because of that, those flowers seemed to be growing stronger. Without thinking twice, Rebis goes over there and starts pulling that plant, and its roots seem to have a life of their own. The boy comments that it had a very strong smell, and Bambi seemed to recognize that plant. He says it was a gnawing flower, and that was exactly the smell our protagonist had been sensing. Now the woman starts to panic, begging for forgiveness, and he tries to understand why she had that smell of the gnawing flower. And when he looked to the outside, he saw a bat. The lord who was watching that, his uncle, comments that he must have already found the clues to the first demon. And they even say that this is getting very interesting. After gathering clues, our big guy goes to that tattoo studio, which by the way was in a pretty rough part of town. When he gets there he finds Jinjae's studio. There was no way that could be a mere coincidence. Meanwhile, those mobsters are talking about Simon's app and saying that with that technology, they could also sell those pills better. Because of that, they could earn a lot of money. One of the guys says not to try those pills because they have brutal side effects, but the crazy one says he doesn't care because those pills give incredible power. At that moment, our hero ends up going up the stairs and finds someone with that tattoo. Besides the symbol, they also had the smell of that flower. The bullies ended up running into Miho, and our protagonist asks if those guys also got that tattoo from Jinjae. The blonde guy walks up to him and asks, "What's up, kid? Are you by any chance friends with Simon?" And when that filthy hand touches his face, he says the kid should show respect to his elders. But our hero seemed to feel great disgust toward humans, and so he slaps his hand away and then lands a slap across his face. The blow was so strong that the guy fell unconscious to the ground. One of the thugs asks if by chance that boy is some crazy bastard, and without even waiting a second, Miho already prepares a punch right in the face. The hit is so strong that it throws him far away. And to feed the demonic power of our protagonist, they keep cursing. In less than 2 seconds, he had already taken down 2 henchmen. The next one tries to punch, but Miho manages to dodge and counterattacks, hitting him right in the nose. The last one left grabs a little knife, thinking that will help somehow. And he keeps saying that it doesn't matter if he's a teenager, he's going to be eliminated. Using his power, he dodges and counterattacks with a kick to the neck. He was so strong that he had to control himself not to kill those humans. And he still asks where Jinjae was. That blonde mobster ends up getting up and he seemed out of his mind, saying he would eliminate Miho. At that moment he felt demonic energy coming out of that human, and the guy jumped on him like a beast. It seems that those drugs had increased that man's physical abilities. And while trying to dodge, he ends up tripping and falls hard on the floor. Because of that, the man comes at him, leaving our hero weakened. The man then prepares to throw a punch, and realizing that blow would be very powerful, he would need to act in time. The scene cuts to another place, and we see Jinjae there with some of her henchmen asking about the app. A red-haired man was demanding the girl about the app, saying that she had promised it would be ready today. They had captured one of the thugs who was stealing those little pills they called Blue Ribbon. Desperate, the guy starts begging not to be killed, saying he stole by accident and still asks for one more chance to keep working with them. The red-haired man looks at a flower pot with blue flowers and ends up pulling them out of the vase. And their stems looked a lot like needles. Seeing that, the guy starts crying and keeps begging for his life. But it's useless. The redhead goes toward him and prepares to stick those roses in his face, doing it and hitting him straight in the eye. And we see that those flowers were not normal. Jinjae, who is usually so tough, when she sees that scene she becomes a little shocked. Again the man begs to be forgiven, but it's no use. The redhead prepares another attack and again sticks those roses into his eye. And immediately the man falls backward to the ground. He screams in pain, begging for a second chance. And the redhead tells everyone that they should understand very well. He would not tolerate betrayal. Jinjae, when she sees that, realizes that the hole she had gotten into was much deeper. So she is told to stop crying and to bring that app immediately. Looking away, she says she understood and would get it done. The scene changes to outside and she's trying to call someone, saying she's going to be in deep trouble. The person she was calling was Simon, and she wanted him to bring that app right away. The boy's phone was ringing, but he was so focused that he wasn't paying much attention. And when he saw who it was, he decided to answer. On the other end of the line was Miro, and our hero said that he was investigating the person who was threatening our protagonist, but hadn't found her. Simon immediately asks, "What do you mean? What are you trying to say?" "Well, you know Jinjae, don't you? You answered her call that day at the restaurant, didn't you?" "Jinjae? What do you mean, Miro? What are you saying?" Our protagonist says that he saw her name in his contact list, so he started investigating this girl and even asked if he knew where she lived. The boy there already thinks they caught our protagonist and were torturing him. But calm down, Simon. It's not like that. Miho was investigating to find out if she was really a person involved with trafficking. But at that instant, something ended up catching our hero's attention. It was a cat acting strangely, standing on two legs. Simon yells at him not to get involved with those people, because they were part of the mafia. However, there was something much more interesting in front of him, and he ends up hanging up the phone. At that moment, the cat goes back to standing on four legs, pretending to play with a little ball. But our hero approaches, asking what that furry creature was doing, spying on him, and immediately grabs the little cat and lifts her up. "Hey kitty, you're hearing what I'm saying, aren't you? Let me help you understand." At that moment, the little cat began to speak, saying that she was understanding him. Yes, Luin Sarai says that the last time he was spied on it was by a rat, then a bat, and now it was a cat. So he asks what exactly she was. The girl says she was a monitor of the human world sent by the demonic realm, and was there to watch over the prisoners. That was why she had been watching Lord Rabbis all this time. And the girl even asks how he realized she wasn't a normal cat, and he says it's because she was standing on two legs. Upon realizing that, she gets scared, noticing that cats don't behave that way. Besides, it made no sense for him to question her, who was just a lackey. He should ask the person who had sent her. Using his power, he asks the person controlling that creature to reveal themselves, and the spell ends up hitting the little cat directly. And the person who was behind all of this was precisely Bambi. And the guy says that our protagonist found him faster than he expected. And all angry, he immediately asks, "Hey you jerk, you're the one spying on me, aren't you, you bastard?" And in a mocking tone, Bambi laughs at his best friend, calling him a bastard. But Miho wanted to understand what he was plotting. And pretending to be clueless, he says he wasn't plotting anything. "Ah, whatever, so let me ask you something." He wanted to know if the demon prisoners who were sent to the human world could use powers like he was doing. And through the little cat, Bambi says that there were some exceptions, and that he would find that out later if he kept investigating. There was something else Miho wanted to ask, and it was about the gnawing flower. He reminds his friend of that horrible smell they sensed when they were younger, and even comments that the same odor exists now in the human world. Bambi says that the fact that Hilke's influence had spread throughout the human world was something the counselors of the demonic realm already knew. They knew that Hilke was involved in several mafia dealings in the human world. And the lettuce head laughs, since Rabbis really was a very clever guy. The human world was no longer what it used to be, and had become a stage for all kinds of schemes. And since Rabbis was in the human world, he was supposed to clean up all the mess, says the lettuce head. "What? Me clean up their mess? I have nothing to do with that." He still asks Bambi what was happening. And at that moment, Bambi makes the little cat return to normal. And of course, Rabbis gets angry since his friend ghosted him and keeps cursing him out. The scene changes back to that building where Jinjae was. The girl was furious because Simon wasn't answering the phone and starts saying she will cut his head off if he doesn't pick up soon. That was really annoying because her life was also on the line. And at that moment she starts calling another person. The guy answers and asks Jinjae what was going on, and the poor man just wanted to play peacefully at the arcade. She tells her henchman that it's time to go after Simon to find out what he's doing. Back in that conversation, our hero asks the little cat if she was a monitor who knew everything about the human world. She says yes, since she had been spying on the prisoners in the human world for many years. Besides, her detection and spying ability was very high, and with a sinister look, he orders her to reveal her true form. Without thinking twice, the little cat immediately uses her spell to return to her original form, and we see that she was quite a cute little girl. And our hero looks at her surprised, saying that she was weaker than he imagined and at the same time felt disappointed. He asks the girl's name and says that Bambi must have sent her for some reason. A bit shy and with blushing cheeks, she says she didn't have a name. Then he says he will call her Lua, since he found her at night. Upon receiving the name, the girl is amazed and even thanks Lord Rabiz, saying that she will never forget her new name. Now she was supposed to spill everything she knew about the human world. Later we see Simon running through the streets, and the boy was almost dying. He thought Miho was in danger because he got involved with Jinjae. Then there's a flashback of him running with a backpack and a bouquet in his hands. He had placed third in a contest, and it was at that moment that he met Jinjae. They were waiting for the boy, and she asks if he had gotten third place in a software developers competition. She even mocks him, saying that the prize was only 5 million, and that if he worked with her he could earn 10 times more than that. Seeing that girl, he immediately realized he was getting himself into trouble. But the boy had no choice. He ended up being forced into that gang of criminals. The red-haired man kept saying that the boy should stop crying as they were only giving him a job opportunity. They would pay 50 million WS in cash for him to make that app. In truth, what they wanted was for him to sell the app he had created, but the boy said he didn't want to sell it. Holding that blue pill in his hand, the redhead just ignored him and then said that Simon had no choice. And that's how the boy ended up getting caught in this mess. And that's why he ran after our protagonist, worried about him. Simon needed to stop Jinjae from dragging Miru into trouble. But at that moment he ends up bumping into someone. He even says he's sorry, but when he looks up he realizes it's one of those mobsters. And to make things worse, he hears Jinjae's voice. She was standing right in front of him, furious. She says that this kid is done for having made her look like a fool. So they end up capturing the boy, and after taking him inside the office, the girl says he would stay there managing the app, but he asks for a second chance. Of course, the girl doesn't care and ends up saying they'll see if he'll fulfill his role and finish the program's development. They even put a computer there so he could finish the app, but the boy is very worried about his friend, thinking he's been killed. Outside, while watching Simon, they keep saying that boy was very stupid. However, he was useful, since he made an app that could be used to sell those pills called Blue Ribbon. With the help of that dumb kid, they could make a lot of money. But they keep saying it's awful having to depend on such a foolish boy like him. The app he had made was called I'm Here. At that moment, the red-haired man shows up and even asks if Simon had finished the app and if it was already ready for use. One of the guys says the app is already ready to use and only needed a few tweaks. And the redhead says they need to collect information from the buyers. That app called I'm Here worked like a kind of location sharing service. Because of that, it would be very easy to sell the Blue Ribbon, and that way they would become millionaires. But it seems that money wasn't the most important thing to that guy, since that mysterious pill hid a dark secret. And holding the Blue Ribbon, he says he's going to show that pill to everyone. The scene shifts to the school where that app started becoming very popular. Practically half of the students had already downloaded the app, saying that if other people downloaded it, the referrers would earn 300 points. Because of that, they began sending the link so their friends would also download the app in order to earn those points. A girl starts pressuring a nerdy student, saying she had to download the app and use her link. And that Blue Ribbon candy had already spread throughout the school, with everyone there saying they were delicious. That so-called Blue Ribbon was sold as if it were a dietary supplement. And by the end of that day, the app was already proving to be a success. Jinjae keeps saying they never imagined the launch would go that well. But at that moment, they say an animal had entered the office. Jinjae asks what kind of animal it was, and they say it was a bat. And after going to the security room, they see the bat on camera. It was very strange because it looked like that creature was spying on them. And to make matters worse, a rat also appeared on the cameras, and there were even some weird noises. Very angry, Jinjae starts yelling, saying they must be joking. One of the mobsters receives a message on his phone and even calls out to Jinjae, who keeps shouting, asking what the hell he wants. Then he tells the girl that a new batch of those blue pills has arrived. The scene shifts to a different neighborhood nearby. Our protagonist had met up with Lua, and the girl wasn't managing to get out of the hole to pass on the information. After managing to escape from there, she jokes, saying that she had been eating too much lately. And all cheerful, she says that she managed to gather information thanks to her espionage skills. The previous night when he had beaten those guys up, he ended up noticing that those pills had a strange smell. It was the same smell as the gnawing flower. and after that guy ate that candy he had awakened a demonic power. That meant some demon was in the human world using those flowers to control people. And thanks to Lua he obtained the information that this drug was called Blue Ribbon, and that it was being sold through an app. Miho then asks if she discovered the ingredients, and a bit embarrassed she says she hadn't found out yet since it was highly secret. Then he says, "Man, you really are useless, you couldn't even find out that much." Feeling guilty she says that she will investigate even further. But she had already discovered where the trucks that brought those candies came from. Touching the girl's forehead, he tells her that she should start investigating where they are made. She lets it slip that Bambi doesn't let her go too far. Then our hero asks if by any chance she reports everything to him, as she rubs her forehead from the poke. She keeps saying yes, she reports everything to Lord Rabbus, and also to Lord Bambi. However, our hero wanted her to have only one master, and she should choose only one of them. And of course she already starts crying in worry. If she chose to serve only Lord Rabbus, he could free her from being a pathetic little creature. The little girl starts imagining herself as a super powerful demoness, in her mind that is. Because of that she kneels down and says that she offers him all her servitude. She will be loyal only to Lord Rabbus. Because of that he would do as promised and ends up accepting her as his subordinate. And she begins to emit a red light. That was our protagonist's spell, and he ends up pulling Bambi's little spirit out from inside her. And he even says that now, that old friend of his would no longer have influence over the girl. Now that he already had her complete trust, they would go after Blue Ribbon. The scene changes to a bit later, and the two end up going to a distant part of the city. The girl keeps saying that it's exactly from there that the truck shipments came out. However, that container was locked with chains, and preparing a punch, he tells her to move aside. And then he delivers a powerful punch at those chains. And instantly the doors open, they both get tense. Covering his nose, our protagonist complains that the smell was terrible. Those boxes emanated a dark energy, and the two keep complaining, saying that the stench was too strong. The smell was exactly from those gnawing flowers. At that moment the scene returns to a flashback with him training with his uncle. We see that the boy's uncle didn't go easy on him. The guy trained him hard, he needed Lord Rabbus to become powerful, for he would be the future demon king. That's why his uncle made him undergo intensive training. At that instant he ended up taking a powerful punch, but he blocked it with his arms. And his uncle even laughs, since the boy was a prodigy. And because of that strike he ends up falling off a cliff. "Damn you, uncle," and from up there the scoundrel keeps laughing, saying that the boy would probably die. And that was just to scare him, since he knew Lord Rabbus was very resistant. After falling down our protagonist complains about the pain in his back. And his uncle jumps down too, mocking him, saying he's surprised he didn't die. But at that moment they end up noticing something. There were several bodies with those gnawing flowers. It seemed that those bodies had been hidden there for a long time. And the boy was a bit shocked to see that. It seemed he had never witnessed anything of that level before. When darkness and light were divided, and beings that could never coexist entered into conflict, there were things that grew without being absorbed by any color. The scene goes to a very distant past. From the place where they joined, the first flower had bloomed. Those flowers had devoured forsaken celestials and tormented demons. The true desire of that flower was the destruction of the world. His uncle tells that to young Rabbus, and he listens carefully, storing it in his memory. Returning to the present, he tells Lua that he remembers very well having burned all those flowers along with his uncle. But even so, many of those flowers returned and were now in the human world. And the strangest part of all was that the first time that flower was seen was exactly in this world. The human world was a place where the realms of darkness and light mixed, and according to human history, they say those flowers were exterminated thousands of years ago. And if by chance they had appeared again in both worlds, it meant someone was behind all of it. Lua keeps thinking about that while covering her nose so as not to smell that stench. At that moment someone turns on a flashlight and ends up aiming the light directly at the two. One of the mobsters says he heard a voice and Jinjae was there with them as well. Those guys were thinking they were just thieves, but then remembered it was that boy who showed up at the tattoo shop. Pointing her finger, Lua keeps saying to her master that that was Jinjae. And all angry the girl keeps asking who he thinks he is to destroy her tattoo shop like that. Calmly our protagonist asks if it was her who was managing all of that, and if she knew anything about the hidden material behind Blue Ribbon. Laughing, she asks if by chance he's trying to steal the important information about the material and the secret formula of her product. No, actually it's not that, I don't even care that much. He just didn't like the horrible smell that thing spread through the air. Taking the blue ribbons out of her pocket, she says she's going to teach him a lesson and would do it through a special distribution of the blue ribbons. And when the guys get those sweets they go crazy. The guys ask if it was really safe to eat that, but Jinjae says they should just shut up and eat quickly. And instantly they begin devouring that blue ribbon. Our hero tells the girl to hide because she would only get in the way of the fight, and she runs off. Immediately they begin to obtain a dark energy, and after her command they rush forward and we see that they gain super speed. Our guy comments that they seem to be drunk, since they do not move coherently. With glowing eyes he says they should attack, since their demonic energy was not enough to beat him. Our big boy blocks an attack and immediately counterattacks with a punch to the face. Another bully comes at him but takes a blow to the face. That was relatively easy, since they were simply humans. The guy with a knife gets beaten like a child. And to finish him off, our protagonist lands a left jab. Another mafioso comes from behind and grabs his waist. Miho even says he is an idiot, and having been caught by surprise, he ends up falling to the ground. Noticing that opening, the mafioso tries to knee him, but Miho manages to block at the last moment. Lua was watching all that and is frightened. She even imagines that that woman is a supervillain. Because of the effect of that pill, they were out of control, and they all begin to surround Miho and land several blows while he thinks he did not expect them to be so powerful. In that case, he would have to have another strategy. He ends up punching one of those cardboard boxes, and from inside he grabs one of the packages and immediately pulls it out and throws a kind of powder that was inside those packages into those guys' faces. The smell causes them to choke. He was furious, saying he could not stand these low-quality curses, and because of that he began to burn with rage. The mafiosos did not quite understand why, but it seemed that smell nullified their power. At that moment, our hero appears, slaps that jerk in the face, and then crushes him into the ground. He tightens his fists and delivers a powerful punch to his face. Unexpectedly, another guy appears trying to kick his face, but he dodges. And holding the leg, he knew he needed to be careful not to kill these humans. Then he throws the guy hard to the ground, and holding that leg, he prepares to immobilize it. And stomping, the blonde one screams in pain. The other brute charges, screaming that that kid should die once and for all. But our hero simply punches him in the chin. The guy loses consciousness for a few moments, and grabbing his back, he pushes that madman and with a strike makes him hit his head hard on the floor. Jinjae, who was watching that, is left not understanding where the guy got all that power. And now that only she remained, he begins to emanate an even darker energy. And of course the girl soils herself. He was much more terrifying than she had imagined. Stammering, she asks whether by chance he was a ghost or a demon. But the big boy says he is much worse than that. The scene changes to a theater performance. A girl was dancing ballet, and meanwhile her mother watched everything from a room via a television. That red-haired mafioso ends up entering through the door. The woman gets scared, asking who they were and whether they were mafiosos. He had brought with him a jar full of blue ribbons, and at the sight of those blue pellets the woman is already frightened. It seems she knew exactly what they were. Calmly, he asks why she is so nervous, since he had already taken care of everything. She says she doesn't care if he had already handled production and sales, and still asks the guy if there really was a problem with taking those slimming pills. So the guy asks, "Right, are you only going to question this now after filling your daughter with those pills?" We see that yes, there were many side effects, and the mother realizes at that exact moment that her daughter is not well at all. Paralyzed, she asks what was happening, and the girl begins to foam at the mouth and her eyes turn red. And then the redhead says that that mother was in a big hurry for her daughter to lose weight, and even asks how many pills she had given the girl. Seeing that her daughter was about to faint, the woman begins screaming upstairs. At that instant, the girl twists her ankle and collapses to the floor. The audience becomes worried, asking what was happening, and some theater staff go there to check if the girl was okay. And in that room, the woman is in shock, screaming and even saying to the redhead that he had promised there would be no side effects. Well, that would be true if she had stuck to the correct dosage. But in any case, that woman's daughter had no more hope of surviving. All this because she had given her daughter those slimming pills. From now on, her daughter would no longer be able to survive without the blue ribbons, and thus she would become their most VIP customer. Furious, the woman begins to scream, asking if he knows how much she had invested to get to that level. But it seems that all this was part of that guy's plan. He wanted to addict some rich people so they would become dependent VIP clients. At that moment, he received a call from Jinjae and even asked why she was calling. Now, when he answered the video call, the girl kept saying that she was sorry. But our protagonist puts his face close to the phone and says that he wants to know if it was that redhead who produced the blue ribbon. Shocked by that information, the guy asks who that boy was. "Well, it looks like I found out. It's you, isn't it, redhead? Come here and talk to me." The guy simply hangs up the phone and tells that girl's mother that he needs to leave because something urgent came up. The scene cuts to those warehouses. Lua asks our hero, why did humans use those candies? And Miho says it's because humans are stupid. They were convinced that even if they used those candies, they wouldn't get addicted. At that moment, Lua ends up pointing her finger, saying that they had arrived. And the girl shouts the name Jongmu, the name of that redhead. He appears, asking if Miho is that same boy who went to the tattoo shop. Forming an aura, he asks if our hero was looking for him. But our hero says he wasn't necessarily looking for him. He just wanted to know the origin of those candies, since he knew that was something a mere human couldn't easily obtain. And the guy is already confused. Right? What do you mean a mere human? Don't tell me this guy is some kind of mystical being. At that moment, the scene shifts to a flashback. When Zhang was a child, he was hitting his father and even yelling for him to wake up. But the old man was already unconscious, and he asks if by chance the man was dead. All he wanted was for his father to give him those candies. You all know exactly what candy I'm talking about. If he didn't hand them over, the old man would really die. He keeps threatening the kid. Realizing he wouldn't get any more candy from his father, he started kicking the old man. At that instant, the old man begins to whisper, asking how he was supposed to get them, and his eyes start to glow. Zhang becomes scared seeing that scene. Wait, wasn't my father dead? A dark energy appears behind the old man and asks if the boy is sad that this man died. And of course he's in shock when he sees that. And the shadow also asks if he would like that old man to come back to life. But Zhang starts laughing, saying that he isn't sad at all. The only thing I need from my father is for him to give me the candies. Thus the shadow understood. And handing him a gnawing flower, the shadow says that the boy must feed that flower with his father's body. Once he inserts that plant into the old man's body, a pact between them will be sealed. If anyone tried to break that pact between them, he should kill that person. The boy becomes mesmerized looking at that flower, and at that moment he starts laughing. Without thinking twice, he prepares to place that plant into his father's body, and that way the scene returns to the present with him asking our protagonist what he meant by a mere human. Hearing those words, Miro realizes that this boy wasn't an ordinary person, and the redhead ends up admitting that he knows someone who gave him a new life. Miro's suspicions were confirmed. That boy made a contract, and cracking his knuckles, he says he doesn't know who the boy made that contract with, but he knows the two of them are out of luck. Hearing those words, Young becomes furious, asking how that boy dares insult his master. So he orders his henchmen to capture him. Seeing that the battle was about to begin again, Lua runs away. The fight was about to start, and Miho already rushes at those henchmen. The scene changes to an ambulance. The woman realizes she had put her daughter in a mess, and that drug called Blue Ribbon had exploded among young people. It was becoming increasingly popular, and they kept distributing it among themselves. And when a person consumed too much of that candy, they ended up losing control. The mobsters say it's been a success and that they'll open a branch both in China and Japan. And poor Simon was there working on the app. He knew his program was being used for evil, and that was something he didn't want. That's why he was praying for someone to please stop those mobsters. Back at the containers, our protagonist had already finished off one of them. Actually both, and had even called the redhead to come at him. Turning to the redhead, Miho asks when his boss will show up, but the boy remains silent. He had received orders from his master saying he must eliminate anyone who gets in his way. That's why the boy prepares 3 candies and says that he'll do exactly as Lord Borog commanded. Jinjae tries to explain to Young that that high school boy isn't ordinary, and even hints that maybe he's producing new candies, leaving Miho confused. Inexplicably, the boy appears right behind him. Our hero is surprised as the boy was incredibly fast. There was no time to dodge, so he ends up blocking. And right after, Young prepares another flurry of punches. He thinks that this boy is very fast and at a completely different level from the others. Young is also shocked, asking how Miho manages to block his attacks. Our protagonist asks if he received any kind of blessing from that demon, and the guy keeps saying that he is not a demon but is king. Upon hearing this, our protagonist begins connecting all the dots and asks the boy if by any chance the person he calls king is named Fist of Borog. Hearing that, the redhead asks how he knows that. And our hero says that among all the people he knows, that one is the most bastard and pathetic of them all. Of course, that leaves the redhead completely enraged. Seems like you must have been really desperate to side with trash like him. And if the goal was to make the redhead mad, our hero had succeeded. With that, the blows began to intensify. And continuing the provocation, Miho says that Borog must have climbed up in life. Then he remembers a flashback when he had eliminated several people. At that time, he had managed to destroy many from the clan, but that coward Borog managed to escape alone. He even saw that bastard running away. Back in the present, he comments that that guy must have hidden in the human world and was now trying to gain control. Young asks if that bastard is going to keep insulting his master. He crouches down and starts exhaling a dark energy. Covering his nose, Miho comments that the stench is getting much stronger. Completely furious, he charges like a beast, asking if Miho will really keep insulting Lord Borog. He draws strength from who knows where and begins kneeing Miho in the stomach. Then he prepares to slam him hard onto the ground, and our hero falls on his back, hitting the ground hard. The impact was surprisingly strong, and right after, Young prepares another punch. While our hero defends himself, Young keeps saying he will not let anyone offend his master. He was completely out of control. It seemed he had lost his sanity to that demonic energy. And the blows were so heavy that our protagonist begins spitting blood. Seeing that scene, Lua starts to worry, thinking her master could very well lose that fight, especially because Rabus's human body was very weak. If only he were in the demonic realm, he'd be much stronger, says the girl. Our hero's uncle was watching that whole fight, and Bambi says that the power of demons really had reached the level of influencing humans. If things kept going at that rate, Rabus would probably lose his life and his soul would have to be erased. But the boy's uncle was confident and asks if Bambi knows what Rabus hates the most. The lettuce head says his friend hates many things, so it's hard to pick which one he hates most. But the uncle tells the boy that there is something his nephew truly hates, and that thing is dirt. That's because Rabbus had an obsession with cleanliness, so he absolutely could not stand being dirty. At that moment our hero ends up blocking an attack. He was furious since his body was covered in dirt and blood. Young stares at our hero extremely irritated. He says he can't stand it anymore, feeling that disgusting smell coming off him. With absurd strength he begins squeezing the hand of that wretch so hard that the guy backs away to avoid having his hand crushed. Trying to regain his composure, the redhead asks what was happening. Looking at his own hands, our hero says it was only superficial, but even so he had regained a bit of his former power. The guy keeps staring at him and charging energy into his fists. He says he doesn't want to touch that filthy body again and dashes forward with incredible speed, saying he'll end this fight once and for all. He ends up hitting Young right in the face, and the redhead starts wondering how a human could have power that rivaled his own. Watching everything, Lua celebrates. It was very humiliating, a prince of the demonic realm fighting a human. That's why he says he'll end this right now. And he finishes the guy off with a powerful punch to the nose, sending him flying far away. Jinjae, who was watching, is left in shock and with his face all bruised. The guy asks what the hell he was. I already told you to shut up, you stinking bastard, and lands another punch. It seemed that redhead was very resistant. And watching that fight, Bambi asks what happened for him to suddenly gain that strength. The uncle jokes, saying that redhead was merely serving as a test for him to activate the power inside the body. And he probably activated the power of that stone they had placed since he got all dirty. That caused great anger. Because of Rabbus's obsession with cleanliness, he ended up going berserk. Even with that magic stone, the lettuce head was surprised since his friend had managed to use his powers even in a human body. Even with the demonic bloodstone, he shouldn't have been that strong. His uncle laughs, saying that's because Rabies wasn't just any guy. Rabies had taken after his uncle, which is why he was so strong. In returning to the human world, our hero was giving him a beating. The guy was getting hit so much that he even begged for it to stop. Calling the redhead a fool, he also says that the guy should consider himself lucky. He was lucky because our hero couldn't kill people in that world, otherwise, his soul would be erased. All beaten up, the guy keeps saying that he shouldn't be losing like that, since he had received Barog's powers. At that moment he ends up noticing something. He was even about to put his plan into action, laughing as if he had discovered something. But our protagonist says not to even think about doing that. He realized that guy was planning to release that foul smell toward him. Because of that, Miko already prepared a final blow. This would be the strike to finish that lunatic once and for all. Jiang realized he was doomed, and then he took the final punch right in the middle of his face. Our hero realized the fight was already over, and we see that the guy's face didn't end up looking too good after that. He even screams for a moment but ends up losing consciousness. Miko puts his hand inside his suit and pulls out a handkerchief, saying that the smell was extremely unpleasant. Meanwhile, Simon was there working on the app. He needed to make some improvements, but he didn't want to be doing that kind of thing. He was just an ordinary student who suffered bullying at school. He remembers that the students also bullied Miko a lot. That was because the boy was small and weak. That's why he wanted to create an app where people could find real friends and not feel lonely or abandoned. He had made his app exactly for that purpose, not to sell candy. All motivated, he starts typing lots of code and immediately the program begins showing some errors and stops working. He was rebelling against those mobsters, and after standing up he grabs a chair to block the door. The thugs keep banging from outside, saying that the boy must get the app working again, but he yells from inside saying that he's going to shut it down for good. He needed to act fast, otherwise they would manage to break through that glass and get in, and it didn't even take 2 seconds. They had already smashed the chair and broken in. The boy turns and realizes they had already entered. Immediately the mobster goes up to him and punches the boy. He falls to the ground and starts getting kicked, while the other guys try to figure out how to fix that app. They didn't understand a thing about programming, so they were lost and had no idea what to do. While being beaten, he says he just needs to endure those kicks while the program finishes deleting itself. He had set the program to self-delete. At that moment he grabs a piece of glass from the floor and cuts the mobster's leg. While the guy screams in pain, the boy prepares to escape. He goes to the corner of the room and grabs a fire extinguisher, and pointing it at those bastards, he starts spraying the smoke. The extinguisher powder leaves them blinded for a moment, and in that way the program completes its self-deletion. He realizes his plan had worked. The criminal charges at him, calling the boy trash. He gets caught and the guy grabs his neck. Then he throws him to the ground, saying that he did something terrible and therefore must be eliminated. The other mobsters didn't understand what was happening, since they couldn't see anything. If he died now, at least he had managed to stop the sale of those candies for a moment. In the end, they called him nothing more than a coward. The guy kept cursing him, but suddenly Miko appears behind the man, with glowing red eyes. The thug starts trembling, looking back, and when he least expects it, he's already been caught. The others still couldn't see anything, and from a distance, they could only hear the screams of their partner. Little by little that powder begins to clear, and they see that the one there was that high school boy. Of course they start shouting for that boy to let their companion go, and that's exactly what he does. He lets go, but immediately charges at them. And swiftly he manages to stop those bastards, since they had laid hands on his only subordinate Simon. With tears in his eyes he asks if Miro was okay. Then the scene goes back some time earlier, when he was telling our protagonist how his app worked. It was nothing more than a forum where people with similar interests could meet. Miko, before suffering that reincarnation, had been excited about that app. And Simon also says that he added an extra feature. Since both of them were always being bullied and beaten at school, he created that emergency button. That would serve to alert nearby friends that something dangerous was happening. You just had to configure your friends to be able to see the alert, and they would receive a notification. That was a way he had created to help Miko, who was always getting beaten up. And the boy smiles as if he feels sorry for himself, and even thanks Simon, saying that he will definitely download it on his phone. Back in the present, he couldn't believe that was the same Miko from before, and he shows his phone, saying that he managed to find his friend thanks to that app. With tears in his eyes, he realizes that the app had really served a purpose, since it saved his life. And so he bursts into tears, thanking our hero. Miho just stands there, trying to understand why the boy was crying so much. Meanwhile, Jinjae was complaining outside, asking how they could be that strong. "Be quiet, girl. You're my prisoner now." At that moment, Lord Rebus appears and the girl calls out to him. But that was the chance Jinjae saw to try to escape. He looks up and tries to sense the smell of those flowers, realizing he no longer smells that stench. They had burned all those containers that held the flowers, and the fire had spread so much that it set the whole forest ablaze, forcing many city firefighters to gather to contain the flames. A woman ends up seeing some unconscious people, and even shouts for help. The redhead was all bruised and our hero made sure to tie him up. And so, they leave satisfied for having partially solved that problem. Simon realizes that something is very strange. That girl was weird, she had a horn and pointed ears. Our hero thinks about his uncle and about Bambi, and he also realizes that he was being used by both of them. And he keeps saying that when he returns to the demonic realm, he'll make sure to get revenge on them. Simon asks if Miho wants to go to the hospital, and he says it's not necessary. Later they go to his house, and he keeps saying it's too much trouble to go to the hospital. Simon feels grateful for having been saved by Miho, and says he pressed that emergency button even though he thought no one would show up. Our hero says that actually he was just passing by and ended up finding the boy. But before he could finish saying that, Lua covers his mouth, stopping him from saying it. It wouldn't be nice for him to say that, since Simon might feel hurt. The scene then goes back a few hours earlier when they were taking Jinjae away. He had asked what she was doing with his friend Simon and she refused to say. The only thing she said was that she was keeping him as a prisoner, and our hero understood that was why he hadn't gone to school. Since he didn't seem very interested in hearing about Simon, Jinjae asks if he didn't come there to fight them because of the boy. But no, he only wanted to deal with the issue of those cursed flowers. At that moment he saw that emergency signal on his phone, and while looking at the app, he ended up entering the street where Simon was. And the little girl says that he can't tell his friend the truth. She even explains to Miho that humans don't work like that. They're not honest 100% of the time. And she even tells him to look at Simon's face, saying that he was feeling very happy for having been rescued. At that moment the four-eyed boy asks who that girl was with him, and our hero says that she's his subordinate. Wait, subordinate? He had already noticed that his best friend had been acting strange for a while. So he asks if he can ask our hero something. He's afraid that Miho might have joined some criminal organization, that's why he had a subordinate. And before the boy can ask the question, Miho says that he can't keep lying for long, so he immediately admits that in fact, he is the son of the Demon King and ended up in this world. It sounded like a fantasy story and the boy didn't really believe it. But he swears it's true. He says he was punished and therefore was sent to human hell. And if you didn't notice, Lua had turned into a cat. At that moment Simon realizes it and lets out a huge scream, asking where that cat had come from, cracking his neck in shock. Our protagonist says that this is Lua, and she works for him. While stretching, the little cat says that he should pay attention to what she's about to say. Wait, there's a talking cat? The shock was so great that he froze. The scene returns to the redhead who was sitting there, head down. He was furious because that bastard Miho had burned all the crops and ruined his plans. At that moment someone appears in the middle of that field, and we see that it was Borog, who ends up using hypnosis on that man. The poor firefighter becomes paralyzed and then collapses to the ground. As he approaches, he says that this poor child ended up with a tragic fate. Screaming, he apologizes to Lord Borog, swears that he will take revenge on that teenager. But the demon extends his hand, saying that first they should talk. That woman who worked as a firefighter seems to have discovered something and saw that it was the packaging of those candies, saying that it looks like it had become very popular among teenagers. And the most bizarre thing of all is that, according to her, they had even received approval from the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety. Furious, she says that those bastards were destroying the youth. At that moment she hears that man who had been hypnotized complaining that his head was hurting. And when they go there, the man says they should check the car first. The woman noticed that the redhead had disappeared and even questions where that bastard went. We move to a building where they had been hiding. Jong asks Lord Borog to give him one more chance. If he delivered more candies, he would gain enough power to resume those plans. The man asks if he has any idea how valuable those flowers that were burned were. And we see that in that place there were several defeated people. He was using them as a kind of farm to produce those plants. And he says that's why humans can't be trusted. Pathetic creatures. But the guy keeps begging, please Lord Barag, give me one more chance, I can do it. But the man tells him to shut up and stabs a gnawing flower straight into his eye. Jong screams in pain, and after falling to the ground he begins writhing. Lord Barag recalls the oath they had made and how he had failed to stop him. The scene shifts to Jinjae. She had gone to the office looking for her cryptocurrency wallet. One of the guys shows up there, the same one she had tattooed Filthy Thief on his forehead. He was holding a knife and she starts screaming, asking who he was. That guy was already addicted to the candies and keeps begging her to give him more. At that moment she realizes she's cornered. Looking to the side, she sees a wooden bat. After grabbing that weapon, the guy asks where she thinks she's going and strikes her in the stomach. She starts screaming in pain and collapses to the ground. And all he can repeat is the word blue candy. After people tried that sweet, they became completely addicted. She had been hit in a fatal area, and with tears in her eyes she says she couldn't die at the hands of trash like that. The man was losing control and a dark energy begins to surge from his body. It was a portal forming. The one appearing there was Bambi, who asks her if she knows what she's doing. Ah, who are you? Please help me. But Bambi says he doesn't have the power to help her, and adds that it's her fate to die in such a miserable way. He also tells the woman that she's destined to accept hell, but he would leave her body lying right there. The scene moves to the Demon King's castle. Our protagonist's mother receives her brother, who is our hero's uncle. She knew her brother had sent her son to the human world and also knew he was planning something. So she turns to him, asking how he dares to use her son. Laughing, he admits he's been caught. But he says she doesn't need to worry because Rabis had already grown a lot and was strong enough to deal with humans. He even admits that he placed a demonic bloodstone inside him, which leaves the woman completely furious. Scratching his ear, he tells his sister to trust her son a little more. In truth, she wasn't worried about her son but about how the world itself would move. She knew very well that this world was completely unstable, totally controlled by angels and demons, and that even a small rift could bring everything down. The uncle agrees but says that the boy is very strong because he takes after him. Punching her brother in the head, she says that's exactly the problem. If even a single strand of Rabis' soul is damaged, he will definitely lose his life. And the woman gets angry, saying that he's already an adult and shouldn't be getting hit by her anymore. Bambi, who was listening to all that, asks the two siblings to calm down and even thinks that his friend Rabis is very lucky to still be alive with such a crazy family. The scene returns to Simon's house and the boy is shocked, realizing his friend really was a demon. In fact, that's what humans called them. All worried, Simon asks if he's going to hell now that he found that out. But Miho says that in fact hell is the human world and reveals that he is the sole heir of the Demon King, the great Lord Rabis. And he also says that when he returns home he's going to take care of his friend Bambi. All worried, Simon asks what happened to the real Miho. Lewis says that in truth the former Miho was already destined to die because he had been beaten by those boys. Simon knew he had no chance of surviving after that beating. Our hero tells his friend not to be so sad because in a few decades they will be able to meet again in another realm. And of course he immediately gets worried, asking if it was guaranteed that he would end up in the demon realm. Lua tries to cheer the boy up, saying that he's very funny and giving a few not-so-friendly descriptions. But Miho tells her to stop scaring him and says that actually it's a very interesting and even fun place. Not really believing it, he agrees and starts crying. Anyway, Miho says he's going to rest since his body was aching. And so he arrives at his house. Maybe that sharp pain in his body was because of the power of the redstone he had used so much. And when he gets there, his sister is all cheerful, congratulating him. The boy doesn't understand anything, so she reveals that today is his birthday. She puts a little party hat on him and says that mom and dad will be home soon. But when he looks at the girl, he notices that her face is bruised and asks what happened. Mia explains that actually she ended up protecting their grandma from some thugs and they ended up hitting her. He didn't understand why someone so weak like her decided to help someone even weaker. With a spoonful of cake, she offers it to her big brother and even puts it in his mouth against his will. However, the taste was wonderful. Human sweets were truly amazing. He even gets enchanted, saying that the flavor was incredible. At that moment, his father appears furious, saying that some thugs downstairs had thrown eggs at his car. The guy was pure trash and ends up hitting one of his employees to vent his anger. The woman had also arrived with him and tells her dear husband to stop acting that way. And the bastard goes there and ends up hitting his wife too. Mia gets angry, telling her father not to hit her mother because it wasn't her fault. And completely enraged, he looks at that cake and asks what the hell they were doing. Her father had been hit with eggs, and it made no sense for them to be celebrating anything. He says that cake wasn't appropriate, and ends up hitting the girl's hand, knocking the fork to the floor. And then he destroys the entire cake. The mother explains that today was Miho's birthday, but the old man says that no one should care about birthdays in a situation like that. He looks at our protagonist, who returns that look with disdain. Then the man turns around saying he's sick of such a miserable house, and slams the door of his office. Our protagonist isn't happy at all seeing his cake destroyed. How dare this bastard touch what's mine? Both of them were crying a lot while Mia kept telling her mother that she hadn't done anything wrong. At that moment he realizes that his father was complete trash, a disgusting and arrogant human. The scene shifts to the next morning. Our protagonist's father is furious, talking about Young Mu, and we see that this man was a politician running for mayor of that city. It seemed he wanted to make contact with another politician to take a photo and gain popularity. But for him it was humiliating to have to chase someone else just to raise his approval ratings. At that moment one of the old man's employees says there's explosive news, a video of his daughter. Some people had filmed her being beaten by some delinquents because she was protecting an elderly woman, and that video ended up going viral on the internet. When the man watches it, he realizes it's a golden opportunity. The news about his daughter was spreading, and people didn't know he was her father. Some employees even suggest he record a video saying that the girl was his daughter, that way his popularity would skyrocket. Laughing, he thinks that's a perfect idea. It could even result in a great photo and a viral video online. The scene moves to another building. A woman is calling for her twin sons. She was their mother and owned an entertainment company. They say that the girl had a brilliant future ahead. She could be used to be turned into an idol. The woman asks her daughter what she thinks of that girl, but the emo-looking girl doesn't seem to like her much. But the mother keeps saying that the face of that girl, Mia, is very beautiful, practically the girl she had been searching for. This would be the girl chosen to become the new body for their mother. Looking at her own hand, she says that this body is already too old and it's time to change it. The woman was basically an Orochimaru. Staring at Mia, she says that body was the perfect vessel. The woman's son, who seems completely out of it, says that little doll is truly adorable and that he can't wait to see it happen. Holding a tablet, Mia's father says that the news is really going viral and that after people discovered he was her father, the approval ratings for his campaign went up even more. One of the employees says he has great news, that he will be interviewed by a newspaper today at 9 p.m. during prime time. And that bastard starts laughing, saying that his daughter finally served for something, and according to him it would be great to put his daughter into charity or volunteer work. Besides that, the secretary of Nox Entertainment had gotten in touch with them, and that made the old man a bit suspicious. But the secretary keeps saying that they're interested in making a contract with that man's daughter. And the old man gets all excited because he could use his own daughter to become even more popular. Laughing, he says that Mia is a hidden gem. The scene changes to our hero together with Simon. He comments that he didn't know Miho's stepfather was a famous politician. He even knew that Miho got along very well with his younger sister but didn't know they had such a disgusting stepfather. Our hero is surprised because he thought that man was his biological father, but he wasn't. He was a stepfather. He remembers his uncle saying that humans were disgusting, but he didn't know it was to that level. He even gets a bit bored since he can't eliminate humans. At that moment he hears a noise. It was Lua, and she had eaten so much that she couldn't fit through the holes. She said she came from the demon realm and brought a message from Bambi. The message said that he wished Rebus great work and even thanked him for ruining Barog's plans, but he hadn't captured him yet. He had even left a gift for our hero, but Rebus immediately tore the letter apart. Simon shows him a piece of news about his father. The approval ratings had risen a lot, and he would probably be elected mayor. The boy asks, "What's this mayor thing? Is he going to be like the boss of the city?" And Simon explains that he's more like an administrator. He says that this greed and desire for power are just like Sirius. Then he asks Lua if she's sure Sirius isn't actually his father in disguise. The little cat explains to Simon that Sirius is a gluttonous demon who lives in the demon realm. He ate non-stop, and that made him hated even by other demons. But she tells our protagonist that his father Tyke is just a human. He was still suspicious, but he knew that humans could be even worse than demons. Anyway, he tells Lua she should stop eating so much, or she'll turn into a Lord Sirius. Simon says he doesn't like how Tyke is using his own daughter to get votes. Our hero finds it strange, but he wants to help his sister, as if he feels a very strong bond with her. Later, he ends up arriving home, and as soon as he enters, he hears someone talking to Mia. It was that woman, the president of that entertainment company, saying that Mia had dazzling beauty. The girl's mother didn't really trust those people, but the father kept saying that she needed to sign the contract. They were going to make Mia become an extremely famous idol, and the man even apologizes, saying that his wife is very reserved, which is why she wasn't agreeing. With a fake smile, the blonde woman says that the wife doesn't need to worry because Nox Entertainment cares a lot about young girls. She even says that today's idols aren't like the ones from the past. And just by looking at that bastard's face, you could tell they didn't have the good intentions they claimed to. Looking at that man, Miho already knows he's worthless. Holding the contract, the father asks where he should sign. To motivate them even more, the woman says that this will be the best decision of their lives. Poor Mia seemed to be feeling pressured. That woman introduces herself as Han Yanju and says that she's the CEO of Nox Entertainment, but our hero ignores what she says. The father asks why his son is being so disrespectful, and if he's not going to say hello. But the woman tells the candidate not to worry because kids these days are all rude. Lord Rabiz doesn't know why, but he feels deep pity for his little sister and even wants to help her. At that moment he remembers the conversations he had with his uncle. The man said he would always be on young Rabiz's side, and that already seemed suspicious to him. Listen carefully, boy. This world is full of evil and hostile forces that desire power and wish to rule over everything. But you are the successor who must inherit your father's will and govern this world. He also tells the boy that such a heavy burden is hard to carry alone, but our hero says that he can handle it. And laughing, his uncle said that someday he would meet someone to whom he would feel attracted, and he wouldn't even realize it. And when he became attracted to a woman, his personality would start to change. The boy keeps grumbling, saying that this would never happen. And after that conversation, the two went back to training. Back to the present, we see him touching his sister's shoulder. He had changed and was now worried about her, even asking if she really wanted to sign that contract. From her sad expression, we can see that she didn't. Listen, Mia, if you're being forced into this, you can tell me. The poor girl was carrying a huge responsibility. Right after her mother married that bastard, he started hitting her. And she had only agreed to marry that man to give her 2 children a better life. She had already tried to separate from him several times, but the man wouldn't allow it. Mia protected her brother and her mother, saying that they would move to their grandmother's house. But he threatened them, saying that if they dared to leave the house, he would destroy their mother. And from the moment he married that woman, they were his children too. That's why Mia said she wanted to sign the contract. She was going to try to become a very famous idol and make a lot of money, but she had one condition. She tells her father that she should receive all the money that came in. She was doing this precisely to help her mother and brother so that they could finally get out of that house. The man gets pleased and says, of course she could earn all the money, and it would all be hers. Laughing, the CEO says that everything was fine. From now on she would be an idol of her entertainment company. The girl's mother asks if she really wants to do this, and smiling she says yes and tells her mother to trust her. Turning to Miho, she thanks her brother for worrying about her. But our hero wasn't trusting this at all. He knew she didn't want to and was being forced. The scene changes to a car, and it's that woman with her 2 children celebrating the victory of making the girls sign the contract. They even mock her, saying she looked so innocent, thinking she would really become an idol. But something that caught her attention was Mia's brother, Miho. The woman asks her daughter what she thought of that boy, and she says she felt something special about him. Surely he wasn't just any human. The old woman laughs, saying that maybe he could be some kind of tracker from the demon realm, just like Lua is. That little girl is also a kind of tracker. Laughing, the boy says that if he really is a tracker, he would love to devour that boy. But meanwhile, the mother says that wouldn't be good, since they should remain quiet and focus only on cultivating Mia in order to take over her body. They needed to be patient because the night without a moon would be the perfect day for the possession. But after that day passed, her son could very well devour that boy, and he gets all excited. The girl ends up calling her mother Monster, and that makes her furious. Touching her daughter's shoulder, she tells the girl never to use that name again, because from now on she would be Mia, or rather in a few days she would become Mia. She also says that not even the Demon King, much less the 12 black seats, would be able to stop her. She would not fail this time. The scene shifts to the next day with the little girl arriving at that building. She was excited because it was her first day as an idol, and she walks in full of motivation. The woman welcomes the newcomer and says she'll introduce her to the other participants. All those girls were being trained to become idols, but the head of the company chose Mia to be the main member. After making that announcement, she tells the other competitors to treat Mia as the leader of the group. And then she leaves. The redhead says she knows very well that Mia is the daughter of the mayoral candidate, and that's why she got the most important role. But she shouldn't think it would be that easy, since she herself had trained for 4 years to become an idol. Driven by jealousy, she ends up slapping Mia across the face. In a threatening tone, she tells the girl to call her father to see if he could protect her in a situation like this. Mia's face gets injured from that slap, even starting to bleed. The old woman goes to her office, and when she gets there, she notices that her son is all excited because there's a fight happening on television. He tells his mother to look at what's happening. Mia was being hit, and when she sees it, she notices the girl's face was injured. And of course she gets furious because she didn't want her new body to have a scar on its face. Because of that, she says that she's going to eliminate that red-haired girl. Later, our hero was talking with Lua, telling her to track down the Nox Entertainment Company. She giggles, saying that she knows that company very well since she has been in the human world for over 200 years. Making an excuse, he says that he's not trying to investigate to protect his sister, but rather to find out the whereabouts of those three, because they didn't seem to be human. He couldn't quite sense the demonic power coming from them, but he knew very well that they weren't ordinary people. Then Lua explains that the longer a demon stays in the human world, the harder it becomes to identify them. She notices that our protagonist is making a grim face, so she warns Lord Rabbus not to keep making that weird expression. Even Simon says that humans don't like it when someone stares at them with such an ugly face. Either way, those people were very suspicious, especially the leader of the company, Seo. Simon says that they haven't even finished dealing with Barog yet, and they're already looking for another demon to hunt. Our protagonist didn't like those words and says that he's going to take him straight to the demon realm. And Lua keeps celebrating, saying she'll drag him there all grumpy. He says that he barely arrived in the human world and is already taking orders from inferior beings. To be able to fight against these stronger demons, he would need to restore his power using the Bloodstone. And Lua says that she discovered a way to restore it. So it was decided while he would train to become more powerful, the two of them would investigate that company where his sister had signed a contract. Meanwhile, that redhead was leaving. She was crying a lot since she had spent 4 years in that company and was now fired. However, someone appears dragging a sword. The redhead looks back, terrified, and realizes that it was the daughter of the company's owner. The redhead begs Rayan to forgive her, saying that she didn't mean to hit that newcomer. And trembling with fear, she says she did it out of a moment of lost patience. She had gotten angry for a brief instant, but that apology wasn't enough. And so Rayan ends up eliminating the girl and even asks how she dared to scar the face of her future mother's body, also saying that her mother hates scars. Yeah, it seems that girl is gone for good. The scene shifts to a flashback where we see a very happy couple walking down the street. The woman was pregnant and it seemed like a kind of demon was coming out from the sewer. That pregnant woman would become its vessel. The scene moves to that couple's apartment. The woman was feeling pain at night, and when she woke up she came face to face with that demon hovering over her body. She tried to scream for help, but it was too late. That creature ended up entering her body. The mother's real concern was for her babies, but she didn't have time to ask for help, and the creature had already possessed her. Laughing, she said that it had worked. That body was now hers alone. Her husband woke up asking what that noise was, and when he looked to the side he realized that his wife wasn't there. Then she opened the door and grabbed him by the neck. She even mocked him, saying that this husband was so poor and how dare he give such a miserable life to that woman. The poor man asks who that imposter was, and then the woman throws him off the building. In the last moments of his life he could only scream his wife's name, and the body she had taken was pregnant with twins. Celebrating, she says that now that body is all hers. Weeks later, during childbirth, she was extremely aggressive and all she wanted was to get those filthy things out of her body. She even blamed all that pain she was feeling on the witch Aeneas. And the witch Aeneas was precisely the mother of our hero. Soon after, the babies are born and the nurses find it very strange. The babies had crimson eyes with black pupils. When they got home, she kept complaining that her body had extra fat because of the pregnancy. The baby's eyes returned to normal and she started kicking them, saying that they should grow quickly and do something useful. The duty of the two was to grow and help her get a better vessel. The woman was worthless and kept going to parties looking for more attractive women. Those two nurses were also at that party, and they keep saying that woman is very strange since she lost her husband and was already out there chasing another man. And we see that she really flirted with young men. While talking, she blew some kind of hidden magic, and the man became dominated by her and even lost consciousness. Then he fell over her and she says to Aeneas that there are handsome young men even in hell. She would do everything to make them all hers, and when that day came she would make sure to take revenge on our protagonist's mother. It seems that something happened between them and we'll see more about it later. The detectives learned about the death of that girl who worked at the agency, and the woman acted all fake, saying that she was very sorry for her death. The detective even warned them to be careful, since it might have been some stalker who killed the girl. Worried, the detective asks if the woman was doing all right. Her son says they should stop with the questions for today since his mother was feeling very sad. The girl also says that it's not good to keep asking her mother questions because she was fragile. The detective agrees and tells his assistant that they should leave and come back another day. But the woman there didn't seem to have swallowed all that falsehood. As soon as they closed the door, she began holding back vomit. And since she had been holding it for too long, she couldn't help it and ended up vomiting right there. We see that insects came out of her mouth. That meant that her body was reaching its limit and she would soon have to abandon it and take a new vessel. The boy becomes worried about his mother, wanting to know if she was really alright. And she says no, telling him that the hidden moon must arrive soon so she can switch bodies with Mia. The boy hugs his mother, saying that he knows she's anxious, but they have to wait for that day, otherwise they won't succeed. However, she says that time is running out and if they don't perform the body exchange soon, she will die. The next day during idol training, they talk about the girl who was killed. The boy acts all fake, saying that maybe there's a serial killer in town. That's why he was worried about the girl's safety. So he says it would be better if they all lived in that building. They don't think it's necessary for them to live there in the dorms. However, the boy keeps insisting, saying that since they're going to be idols, many stalkers could appear. Mia grows suspicious of this, but her desire to make money is stronger. The goth girl says that if they refuse, their contracts could be cancelled. But the boy tells his sister to calm down, saying things aren't quite like that. The goal was to make Mia stay in that building so they could take her body when the time came. So he tells the girls that they should understand that the decision to live there was for their safety and that their parents had already been informed and tomorrow they should bring their things. Mia doubts that this was really necessary, but she didn't have another choice. That same day our hero was training. He was working his biceps with 30 kilograms weights, while Simon could barely lift 8 kilograms. He comments that after training so much he feels his power returning, but it's still not even 1% of his real power back in the demon world. Our hero was angry because he felt he was being controlled by Bambi and his uncle. He even wanted his friend to give him some way to control his power, but Bambi had actually written a letter. In that letter he gave step-by-step instructions on how to control the bloodstone. Normally those stones were used to suppress a prisoner's power, but Bambi had modified it. Amused, he wrote in the letter that the method to break the seal was to take a punch in the eye. And the second gift he had sent was a person to take care of him. Bambi might be a villain, but in truth he was helping his friend. And when Lua delivered that letter to Rabas, he had torn it up. That's why our hero didn't really know how to control that power. He had literally destroyed the instructions. Lua even explains that he ripped up the manual, but he stays there sulking. Then she starts shouting that there's a big problem. Simon finds it strange to see that cat running on 2 legs. She had brought news about the twins that Rabas asked her to investigate. And what she had discovered was that the woman CEO was actually Mara. Simon hears that name and doesn't understand anything. So Lua explains that Mara was one of the 12 black seats in the Witch of Greed, Mara Beliax. She was alive and stealing human bodies. He even laughs, saying that she's hiding very close to him. The scene changes to a flashback from many years ago at a ball in the demon realm. People were praising the demon queen. They said she was extremely beautiful and that her lips dripped words like poetry. All the women surrounded Anaya, saying she was breathtakingly beautiful, and whenever someone approached to praise her, she would bless that person. Mara felt deep envy because she wasn't beautiful. Every time she looked at the demon queen, she burned with hatred. A girl who served Mara said that Lady Mara Beliax was also beautiful. Laughing, she thanks her and says she'll grant her a blessing. And that blessing was that her entire family would be wiped out. The girl starts crying in despair. That woman was truly vile, and all the hatred she felt toward the queen was simply because she was too beautiful. She felt inferior to Lady Anais. That's why she harbored so much hatred. Our hero says that his mother has been telling those stories since they were young, but of course, his mother never cared. However, they eventually discovered that Mara was trying to steal the well of demonic souls. And when she was found out, she ended up escaping to the human hell. Simon asks why she approached Mia and if maybe she discovered who Miho was, but our hero says no. It was very unlikely that she would have discovered he was Rabbi's, but either way, the strength he had now wasn't enough for him to fight against those two. The little cat says that they need to activate the power of that stone soon so he can have enough power to fight them. And with a mischievous face, Lewis says they should prepare to hunt witches. A little later, the scene goes to the market. Mia was shopping with her mother since she would be moving into that building. The girl's mother was very worried, but Mia told her not to worry. According to her mother, Mia didn't even want to become an idol but rather a veterinarian. And the girl ends up looking at a bag of pet food and remembers very well that her true dream was to take care of animals. But it would take too long for her to graduate, start earning money, and help her family. Because of that, she should keep trying to become famous. With a smile on her face, she says that this was a very good opportunity to earn money and she couldn't waste it. But her mother says that if she really moves into that dormitory, they will barely see each other during the week. Feeling guilty, she apologizes. If she hadn't remarried, they wouldn't be suffering. Mia tries to comfort her mother, saying that she knows very well she did it because she thought it would be best for the children. After all, before getting married, that man treated both kids very well. The woman looks at her daughter, feeling deep sadness. The girl tells her mother to wait just a little longer because she will work hard and earn enough money to free her from all that suffering. The scene moves to an amusement park and the group was having lots of fun on a roller coaster. Our hero went too, but he ended up feeling sick and even vomited. Simon teases him, asking if demons can vomit too. It seems he had underestimated human rides. Next, they go to a haunted house. He asks Lua if this was really the place they were looking for. She says yes because there was a demon imprisoned there that fed on people's energy. Curious, he asks what the name of that demon was, and Lua says his name is Eskrim, and he had the ability to turn people's screams into energy power. The girl says that he basically lured people in to make them scream in fear and then devoured their screams. Hearing that, Simon starts trembling with fear, saying that he won't go into that haunted house. But Miho says that he needs him because his scream would attract the monster. And so they end up going inside with our hero saying he doesn't understand why these pretty decorations are scary to humans. Simon was shaking all over and our hero tells him to keep his eyes open because he needed to scream to attract the creature. At that moment something passes by and our hero gets startled too. It seems that Miho, who acted all tough, also let out a little scream. Simon asks if his friend really got scared and he says no, making an excuse that it was only to attract the demon. Then Miho asks what that little scream was because it sounded like a girl's. And in the back we see that the demon was watching them and even said that it looked like that boy had a bloodstone. Miho's real goal was to absorb the power of that demon to become stronger. And that creature opens a portal saying that it will devour them. But first it should make them cry like babies. Simon starts screaming and the creature extends its hand to devour him. Hey Miho, are you sure this one isn't the demon? At that moment our hero touches the creature and tells the monster not to touch his attendant because he was very precious. The demon looks surprised, asking if that human was really just an ordinary human. No, I'm not just any human. And let's see if you also know how to scream. But the monster ends up hitting our hero, saying that trash like him could never touch him. Then it starts sucking Simon's screams since he was crying out like a little kid. Our hero knew he didn't have enough energy to use his magic in both hands. And with his left hand charged he lunges at the demon. The creature lets out a scream, releasing a sound-based magic, and the shockwave hits Miho directly. Simon keeps screaming even more, and because of his cries the monster starts feeding on them, completely enraged. Our protagonist tells him not to keep screaming, and since the creature was looking upward, our hero thought it was the perfect opening to strike. But the monster wasn't distracted, quite the opposite. After dodging that attack, our hero prepares a counterattack. But the monster didn't really believe our hero could hurt him, since he hadn't even awakened 1% of his power and easily dodges. Then the creature tries to bite our hero, but he jumps back and complains, saying that even though he trained, his body is still weak. Unable to jump again, he ends up being captured in midair. Seeing this, Simon has to cover his mouth to avoid screaming. Feeling the pressure of the demon's hands, our hero tries to break free, but the creature forms a sword made of screams and says it will slice him in half. For the Prince of Demons, being defeated by a primitive demon was something truly humiliating. At that moment he was about to be struck in the face. The monster aims right at our hero's eye, saying that the red color is quite beautiful. And then Lord Rebus is hit with full force. Simon starts screaming, he can't hold it in. But we see that what's falling looks like shards of glass. At that moment the monster begins to feel a chill, and our hero thanks him. We see that there was that seal Bambi had placed on him back in the flashback. Bambi had written instructions, having embedded that bloodstone into his friend's body so he would have a chance to reactivate his powers. And now that the seal was broken, our hero says that Bambi was a real bastard. That primitive demon says he won't be intimidated, but Miho says he's no mere human and easily breaks free from the creature's grasp. At that moment he tells Simon to start screaming. But what do you mean? That'll only make the monster stronger, the boy says. But our hero tells him to shut up and start screaming. So the boy takes a deep breath and lets out the loudest scream he can. Because of that, the demon begins consuming the scream's energy and grows stronger. And that was exactly what our hero wanted, because now he could use his power to seal the demon. Simon keeps screaming and delighted. The demon says he's never tasted such a delicious scream. At that moment Miho reveals his plan, saying that the monster becomes slower when consuming screams. That's why this was the perfect chance to strike the final blow, and so Rebus charges at the demon, landing an extremely powerful hit. The blow is so strong that the monster begins to scream. I told you I wanted to see if you could scream too. And with that, the demon begins turning into smoke, disintegrating until nothing remains. All the creature's energy flows directly into Miho's left eye. Now that the bloodstone has been released, he has power close to his original strength. And all he needs to do is absorb evil until he fully regains his true power. After the battle ends, Simon trembles, saying he's afraid our protagonist will be consumed. Our hero says that would never happen, not even in dreams, and adds that it's time to hunt that demon witch. The scene shifts to that woman's company. Our dear Mia, all innocent, goes to her room, or rather her new dorm. The goth girl tells her to put down her bags and get ready for the next training session. Feeling a bit uncomfortable, Mia agrees, and the goth girl slams the door shut. With a chill running down her spine, Mia feels that something very wrong is about to happen. But she still needed to go through with it because she wanted to get her mother and brother out of that house. Looking up, she notices a camera, and that old woman is watching her, saying she's very excited to possess her body. The boy hugs his mother, telling her to calm down because soon they'll take that body. Later our hero meets with Lua, who notices a strange scent coming from him. Then she realizes he's regained part of his power and congratulates him. Now he was truly Lord Rebus Vindica, and she even kneels before him. The boy tells her not to overdo it or she'll draw attention. Asking for Lua's opinion, he wonders if now with this power he could destroy that woman and her 2 children. The girl says yes and warns that there are many demons in this place. They influence people to do bad things, like smoking and developing lung cancer. Lua shows him one such demon as an example, and our hero approaches, then asks what it wanted. Without giving the demon a chance to respond, he immediately begins absorbing it. And as always, Rebus was very fussy about dirt. After discovering that he could grow stronger by absorbing demons, they spent the whole day doing that, facing all kinds of monsters. There were those that possessed humans, making them become drunkards. And there were also the demons of gambling. Rebus says that those monsters escape from the demon realm and come to the human world only to torment people. Simon is shocked, realizing that being possessed by a spirit wasn't just some silly superstition. He thought he was already strong enough to defeat those three. The mother and her 2 children, but he absorbed even more power just to be sure. At that moment he begins to materialize his power, leaving Simon astonished. That's because right before his eyes stood the Blade of Dama, a weapon he could only summon thanks to the power of the monsters he had absorbed. Then Simon asks Miho if it isn't dangerous to leave Lua alone outside. He says no, since she's a specialist in espionage, and she should stay there gathering more information. And we see Lua had transformed into a little bat, but she's complaining that she's been working too much and is even feeling hungry. At that moment, something catches her attention. It's an insect crawling on the ground and she flies to try to catch it. Once she grabs it, she says she's going to eat it. And all that hunger was because Lord Rabus had been telling her to go on a diet. But what caught her attention was that this insect carried Mara's power. That meant her body was already deteriorating. So she flies off to warn our protagonist. At that same building, a car drives out. Inside the car were the mother and her son with Mia unconscious, and the boy says that today will be the day his mother possesses her body. The woman already looked like a zombie, her flesh rotting away. She couldn't wait to possess such a beautiful body, the body of a young pretty girl. Meanwhile, little Lua flies at maximum speed. After reaching our hero, she shifts back into her humanoid form and spits out the disgusting insect. She says that it belongs to Mara, one of her parasites, which means it's already time for her to change bodies. If the parasites were leaving Mara's body, it truly meant the vessel had reached its limit. Simon now believes that the company really is after the body of our hero's sister, and that makes Miho extremely angry, since Mara had always been obsessed with beautiful young women. The boy says she was also jealous of his mother, and Simon asks how old his mother was. He replies that she's 6,375 years old. Simon is stunned and asks how old our hero is. He makes a bored face. He's not sure, but he remembers that when he was a child, his uncle took him to the human world to watch the construction of the pyramids. His uncle said they were building those pyramids in devotion to him. But Bambi said that in truth the humans were worshipping a god named Rhea, who belonged to the celestial realm. Our hero's uncle didn't know that and said it made no sense. After all, he had defeated the god Rhea. Well, since I defeated him, that means those humans are actually worshipping me. After telling this story, the boy, the lettuce head, says that the pyramids were built more than 4,000 years ago. So of course our hero must be over 4,000 years old, right? Lua says they need to hurry because Mia is about to be devoured by that woman. Hearing that, our hero understands how serious the situation is. If Mia's body were taken, he wouldn't be able to save her. They take the girl to that abandoned building, and when they arrive they say that tonight is the moonless night, perfect for performing the possession. That woman was already falling apart, barely able to stand. The boy tells them to get inside quickly and speed up the plan. The goth girl helps her mother climb the stairs, and when they reach the top they're surprised by what they see. Barab was there, cultivating those man-eating plants, right in that same building. The man looks startled, asking what they were doing there. The woman reveals herself as Mara Beliax, and the man recognizes the name. He knew she was one of the Black Seats, but now she was just a fugitive who could barely use her power. He says that the place belonged to him, so they should take those 2 women and leave. But the boy doesn't listen. She asks to use that place because she wants to take the girl's body. And if he refuses, her own children will take care of him. Because of those threats, he hesitates, since those kids were half human, half demon. Laughing maniacally, she tells him to grab his weeds and get out. The man loved his flowers, and when he hears her calling them weeds, he becomes furious. So he rushes at her to attack. However, the boy strikes the man, sending him flying. Laughing, she thanks her son, saying he did an excellent job. The scene returns in a flashback where we see that she had indeed stolen that well of souls, and she used that liquid to feed her children. It was the source located in the deepest valley of the demon realm, a place filled with the tears of the gods that had created the entire universe and also the origin of all evil power. The only holy water that could satisfy her greed. King Gamundar had discovered that she was stealing that water and giving it to her children. She claimed it would make them more powerful, and by making them stronger she could use them to achieve her goals. That woman was basically using her own children. Meanwhile, our hero and the other 2 were running to reach that building. Lua was certain that was where they were hiding. Simon asks why there's such a big building hidden in the middle of the forest. And after sniffing around so much for that insect stench, she says that her nose is hurting. In desperation, Simon says that Miho urgently needs to save Mia. The two tell our hero to go there and bring her back, and they would wait outside. But with a serious look, he says that the boy must go with him too. Lua says that if she goes, she'll only get in the way since she's too weak. And once again, he gives her a terrifying glare and says that she's coming to help him as well. The poor girl even lets out a scream, and with a defeated look, she says she chose the wrong master, since Bambi isn't as evil as Rabus inside there. Mia was inside a magic circle, and the body swap was about to begin at that very moment. The man who had been captured begs for mercy from the great Mara. All wounded, he keeps saying he'll do whatever she commands, and the boy has his foot on his back, mocking him. At that moment, they hear Mio's voice, and when they turn around, our hero is standing there. Mara asks how he managed to find out where they were, and looking at those bodies surrounded by flowers, Simon begins trembling all over. Don't bother calling him a coward, you'd be shaking too. Looking to the side, they notice that the red-haired man who had been selling those blue candies was there. Yeah, my friend, looks like you're out of luck now. Shaking in fear, Simon thinks the same thing might happen to him. Yeah, kid, after this one, you'd better change your underwear and move on. Barug asks if they happen to know that red-haired guy, and Mara's son says that he knew very well that this so-called Mio wasn't an ordinary human. The girl points to her master and says that he is the prince, Lord Rabus Vindica, and they should treat him as his majesty. Upon hearing that, the woman becomes extremely furious, for she hated all Vindicas. Barug also feels great hatred, since it was our hero who exterminated his entire family, and this was the perfect chance for him to avenge them all. Since Lord Rabus no longer had his demonic body, he could finally avenge his clan. Meanwhile, Mara was seething with hatred toward our hero because he was the son of Anais, that insufferably irritating woman, as she says. Facing that situation, he knew that fighting all three at once would be very difficult. So he decides to leave Barug for later, and even tells him he can go. But enraged, Barug says he won't let Lord Rabul leave without dying. Oh boy, you really think you can defeat me? Shut up and get out of here. Hearing that order from the prince, he starts trembling in fear. And just to terrify the fool, he begins releasing his dark power, saying that if Barug leaves now, maybe our hero will let him live. The fact that he could use power even in a human body made Barug terrified. Realizing that our hero truly had his powers, he runs away in fear, even jumping out the window. He turns to the old woman and mocks her, saying that she's no young lady anymore to be stealing other people's bodies. After being called an old hag, the woman starts screaming in anger. Her son tells her not to overexert herself, since her body is too frail. Completely deranged, she says she's had a curious thought. She wonders what would happen to Anais if her son were defeated by her own children. What kind of expression would that queen make? Well, old lady, I'm curious too. I want to see what kind of face you'll make when I, the son of the woman you hate so much, exterminate your two children. That's when Mara gives the order to her children, saying that whoever rips out his tongue first will get a reward. The lazy boy prepares his weapon and says that he's going to rip out Lord Rabus's tongue. But the goth girl doesn't want to be left behind and immediately draws her two swords, saying that she'll be the one to win that bet. Spinning that spiked ball, he says that the boy will be defeated in an instant. But that cowardly brat tries to attack Simon instead. Meanwhile, the goth girl charges at our protagonist, who blocks with his blood sword. The boy complains, saying that his sister is stealing his spotlight. But she says he should just protect her, since her abilities are far superior. Seeing their argument, our hero knows he can use that against them. During the fight, our protagonist starts provoking them, saying they're terrible at working together. Screaming hysterically, the boy shouts that his sister is only getting in his way. Looks like those two hate each other. I should use that against them. At that moment, he blocks the girl's attack and then prepares a stronger counterattack. But the two keep getting in each other's way, and the boy's spiked ball ends up hitting his sister's sword. The girl curses, telling him to watch where he's attacking. And because of that distraction, our protagonist manages to slash her across the stomach. Looking at the tip of his sword, he notices the liquid is slightly different, and realizes their powers are close to those of demons. The boy shouts that our protagonist dropped his guard, and the spiked ball grazes him, cutting across his chest. Right after, the goth girl moves in, saying she'll cut off his head. The boy steps back, barely dodging. Surprised, she asks how he managed to dodge that. Coming from the left, the boy tells Rabus to say his last words. Both were about to strike our protagonist, and since the sword was closer, he blocked it with his red blade. The woman keeps shouting repeatedly for him to die. Die, die once and for all. Sensing the attack was too dangerous, he jumps back. To provoke the boy, he says that his older sister is far more powerful. Throwing a fit, the boy yells that he's the older brother since he was born 18 minutes before her. And because of that, he goes into a frenzy trying to strike our hero. Even our hero didn't expect that his technique to irritate him would work so well. The two begin attacking wildly. The goth girl notices her brother is out of control, and when she tells him to calm down, he starts shouting insults, calling her a bastard. Yes, that's it, perfect. I want you two to start fighting. Exactly like that. At that moment, the boy steps right into his range. The scene shifts. Lua is fighting against Mara. That woman's body is weak, but she's still far stronger than Lua. Meanwhile, Simon is trying to reach Mia to rescue her. There's a barrier of protection around the girl, and when he touches it, he feels it's burning hot. But he has to save his best friend's sister and keeps shouting for Mia to open her eyes. Back in the fight, Lua is struggling badly, but she knows she has to buy time for Simon to recover Mia's body. At that instant, he's thrown back, his hand badly burned, the wounds running deep. With tears in his eyes, he laments, saying he's just a weak human. Then memories of their friendship flash through his mind, reminding him that he must risk himself to protect her. That's right, I need to save her no matter what. I can't give up. He prepares a punch, and after hitting, nothing happens. Back to the fight, Lua is doing terribly. With her body covered in wounds, she staggers. The strange thing is that even with that decayed body, Mara can still unleash powerful attacks. And the woman doesn't stop. She keeps launching blow after blow until one strike sends Lua crashing into a wall. To make things worse for our dear blue-haired girl, the woman throws 2 spears into her shoulders and tells little Lua to watch what she's about to do to that small human. The girl turns, shouting for Simon to be careful. At that moment, the boy realizes he's done for. He's struck by the slimy demon woman. Laughing, she says she'll treat him as her delicious meal. He tries to pull the slime off his body, but it's too sticky. Reaching out toward Mia, she says she's wasted too much time with those brats, and now she'll finally take advantage of this moment to claim the young girl's body. Mia's eyes open and begin to glow. Seeing that, Miho says it's already too late. He channels more power into his sword, deciding to end the fight right now by unleashing several even stronger strikes, but those twins were a tough pair to deal with. As they try to retreat, the goth girl tells her brother they can't let him escape. But at that moment, the boy is caught by magical threads and pulled to the side. Right after, his mouth is sealed with ribbons. He even tries to scream, but no one hears him. The one who was there was none other than Jinjae. The tall girl had arrived to save the day. At that moment, Mara begins vomiting that disgusting slime. That was actually her body, and it was entering Mia's. The poor girl was having her body taken over by that old witch, until all the slime goes through her mouth. She lets out a gasp, then bursts into a mad laugh because the possession had succeeded. The old woman's dry body lay there on the floor, and raising her arms she says that now she feels much better and celebrates, saying it's wonderful to have a brand new body. Simon screams, realizing they hadn't managed to save her in time, and even Lua shouts, lamenting what happened. Meanwhile, our hero was there trying to stop that goth girl. Damn it, I've gone too far. Jinjae seemed a bit strange and even says that Lord Rabis's new look is wonderful. At that moment, he's struck in the arm and trying to stay in control. She calls herself Beltia, saying it's dangerous to be exposed. She couldn't be discovered, but if she didn't help Lord Rabis, he'd probably lose the battle. All cheerful, she imagines Lord Rabis congratulating her. That girl was completely in love. The boy tries to understand what's wrong with that weird girl, and after realizing she was crazy with affection, he tries to crawl away. The goth girl sees her brother trapped, and it's the perfect chance for Rabis to strike her. When she's hit by the sword, she starts screaming for her mother, saying her brother has been captured. The woman notices what's happening, and after removing the tape from the boy's mouth, she asks who did that to him. Looking to the side, that strange girl is gone. But she doesn't care about that and keeps asking her beloved son if she's truly beautiful. In shock, Simon asks if there's no way to save Mia anymore, if they've already lost their chance. While restrained, Lua tells them not to lose hope, because Miss Mia's soul hasn't disappeared yet. Our hero asks if that's true, and she says yes, because tonight there's no moon, so the human world and the demon world are still connected. That's exactly why Mara chose this day to perform that kind of body transfer. At that moment, Mia feels something inside her body and shouts for Miho, saying she's managing to break free from the demon's restraints. The boy asks if that's really true, but then she starts giggling, saying this is so much fun. At that moment, he realizes she's making a fool of him, releasing that slime from her arm. She says she's done playing around and will end this little chat once and for all. The boy also begins spinning his weapon, getting all worked up, saying he'll kill that kid to please his mother. Fighting 2 hybrids was extremely difficult for him in that weak human body. Looking at his friends, he realizes that if he doesn't act soon, they'll die. With a disgusting expression, Mara says she's going to devour those 2 boys. But at that instant, a small sphere falls near that ugly witch. She looks at it confused, but then an explosion bursts out of it, releasing a small doll of rabies that sprays some kind of poison. The woman panics, trying to cover her nose. What? Looks like that was a doll of mine. The woman starts coughing, saying that smell is horrible. And right then, Jinjae appears. She removes the spike stuck in Lua's shoulders and equips her with technological gloves, putting them on both hands. With an excited face, she tells Lua to use that weapon, though the girl doesn't understand anything. Then she removes the slime from Simon and hands him a weapon, telling him to help Miho. What? She gave me a weapon. Completely confused, Lua asks how that human has an object with demonic powers. Looking at the pistol, he realizes it has a mathematical power. It's strange, but he can feel the item's energy. And at that moment, he's hit by a massive shock. It's not just any shock, it's a surge of spiritual energy. And immediately he begins to understand how it works. Mara asks where that human got such items. And while she's distracted, Lua lunges at her with those metallic claws. The girl takes great care not to harm the body of Sir Miho's sister. Screaming in fury, the woman demands to know where she got those toys, but Lua says not to disrespect that magical weapon. Otherwise, she'll end up suffering the worst. That slime is crawling across the floor, and to provoke the girl, Mara says those weapons are nothing but useless toys. Stretching the slime, she tries to strike the girl. In truth, Mara was trying to gather the remaining slime scattered on the floor. Jumping back, Lua realizes that the witch is quickly adapting to her new body. And upon looking closely, she notices a kind of umbilical cord coming out of her. That could only mean one thing. She was still connected to the old body. And when she looked back, she realized that was exactly the case. Mara had even placed a protective barrier there. That was because she hadn't yet fully connected her soul to the new body. The woman becomes furious upon realizing that Lua discovered her plan and attacks the girl, saying she won't let that little brat destroy her old body. The scene shifts back to Simon, who had returned to normal after awakening that new power. He had somewhat figured out how that pistol worked. He goes toward Mara's body and sees it protected by a purple barrier. The woman was distracted, fighting against Lua, so this was the perfect opportunity to destroy that protective seal. He had already understood from the start that her soul hadn't been completely transferred yet, and if he could destroy the object protecting her body, maybe he could interrupt the transfer. He had tried it once before and failed, but this time it was different. His eye starts glowing. Because of the power he had awakened, he now saw the protective barrier as if it were a set of mathematical equations. If all of that was geometry, then it could be converted into formulas. And that's exactly what he does. He even starts typing on a kind of virtual keyboard. The boy was a math prodigy. You know that, right? Since everything in the world involves mathematics, he could dismantle that protective spell. Lua watches all of it, trying to stay discreet, and the only thing she can do now is trust the boy. While blocking an attack, she wonders if he's managing to do that because of the weapon Jinjae gave him. Mara has no idea that her protective barrier is being broken, and all Lua can think is that she must buy as much time as possible. After converting everything into a formula, Simon begins solving the equation. If he finds the correct answer, the barrier will be undone. Within seconds, he says he's completed the mathematical equation. His weapon recharges, and he prepares to fire the destructive shot, releasing a super powerful wave of energy. The blast hits the barrier, cracking it completely, and then it shatters. Mara looks back and sees the damage the boy caused. The shot was so strong that he was thrown backward. Seeing the broken barrier, the woman throws a tantrum, yelling to know who did it. And the boy, half crazed, starts laughing. He says he calculated the equations and managed to break the barrier, but it drains so much of his energy that he collapses. Furious, she screams, demanding how those insects dared to interrupt her plan. Lua leaps forward and rushes straight to the woman's old body. With her metallic claws, she prepares an attack and manages to cut that umbilical cord. Desperate, the woman yells, asking how they dare interfere, and hurls slime at Lua's body. From the impact, Lua is slammed against the wall and panicking. Mara rushes to her old body to check if the transmigration had completed. Using her slime, she tries to stop the bleeding. Lua says that Mara's greed grew like a tree, reaching a point where it could no longer sustain its own weight. "What are you babbling about, you low-class demon?" Lua ignores the threats and only says that greed will burn together with its own evil desire. That's because Lord Rabus was right behind her, and he was standing there with the woman's 2 children already defeated. The boy apologizes to his mother, saying he wasn't strong enough to defeat the enemy, and she panics, realizing she's now alone. She wonders how the boy became so powerful, maybe because of that smoke bomb. Jinjae, meanwhile, is all happy and in love. Then the scene shifts to a flashback, showing our hero still chained up with that girl who says she was lucky to have taken a little of his blood. She was going to keep that boy's blood since she's his #1 fan. And we see that she was actually a demon. Bambi had said that if she used the blood she had collected from Lord Rabus, he could regain part of his powers. And we see that inside that smoke bomb, what had actually been released was the demon prince's own blood. And when he felt, or rather inhaled, his own blood, his powers returned. Now that he was overwhelmingly strong, the woman began to feel fear. Her 2 children were defeated, and in a humiliating way. Mara gives some of her energy to her 2 children, and then Lord Rabus releases them so they can fight again. The boy thanks his mother for lending him her power, promising to avenge her, and the goth girl rushes forward, saying that this time she won't miss. However, Lord Rabus was so powerful that he blocks her strike effortlessly with his fists. The woman asks why he risks his life to protect such a despicable human being. And she even says that the girl Mia wasn't really his sister. But he says he's doing all this because of the cake. The birthday cake she gave him was delicious. Mara looks surprised, asking if he's serious. Then he says that the cake he tasted from his little sister didn't have a human flavor. It had the flavor of the celestial realm. The boy asks why he's talking about things involving the celestial realm. As an argument, Miho asks if the two of them have ever given each other a cake as a gift. The goth girl asks if he's crazy for saying something like that. Ah, so it seems you've never received cake in your lives, huh? Just by swinging his hand he slices through the girl, and we see that both his eyes are red, showing that he has recovered most of his power. At that moment he licks his own face, and his eyes glow even brighter. Back in the flashback we see the goth girl telling her mother that she scored 100 points on her test, and the boy says he cleaned the whole house, yet they didn't receive a single compliment from their mother. She closed the door saying they were useless and had only done their duty. All sad, the only thing they wanted was a word of praise. Angry, they said that there was no point in studying or even cleaning the house. No matter what they did, they could never earn a compliment from their mother. The next day they went to a cafe, and the children's mother said she felt hatred toward young women who thought they were pretty. Because of girls like those she couldn't get any men. The little girl noticed that her mother felt very jealous of those women, so she ran over to one of them. Then she pretended to trip, all just to bump into the woman's drink and spill it on her clothes. Furious, the woman asked what had happened, and the girl just said she had tripped. All covered in stains, the woman kept cursing, saying those clothes were very expensive. Then the mother took the kids outside and asked if the girl had really done it accidentally. But when she realized it was on purpose, she started laughing. Hugging her daughter, she said her little girl was so cute and that she did well. At that moment the girl realized she had been praised. The boy said he could do that too, that next time, she should let him be the one to hurt the pretty girls. They both realized that if they bullied the people their mother envied, they would receive praise. And as she grew older, the girl realized that if she also hurt those her mother hated, that would make her happy. And all she wanted was her mother's approval. Because of that, the crimes of the twin siblings began to escalate, with the girl even going as far as killing people. All to earn praise from their precious mother. The woman was so manipulative that she kept saying her children were perfect just because they did what she told them to do. And to control them even more, she kept telling them that if they continued doing those things, their mother would love them even more. Hearing those words, the girl blushed and felt extremely happy. And when he tasted the goth girl's red liquid, he gained access to all those memories. Charging at our protagonist, she says she's going to kill him. And the boy says he's going to do the same. Screaming, Mara orders her children to eliminate him once and for all. But we know that wouldn't even come close, since Rabis was far above them. With a single swing of his sword, he defeats both of them. After finishing them, he says he recognizes those two as worthy opponents. Mara realizes that his eyes have changed too, and she starts trembling in fear. She even comments that he's exactly like his uncle, a ferocious beast on the battlefield. The boy screams, saying he's lost his arm, and the girl somehow manages to stand even after taking a fatal blow. All excited, the young master says that the girl is very tough. But the boy blames his sister for losing his arm, saying she got in his way. Because of that, the girl becomes furious. He says that if it weren't for her, he would have defeated Lord Rabis long ago. Our protagonist doesn't bother listening to their argument, and the goth girl realizes that if she doesn't escape, she'll be cut in half. With no way out, she grabs her own brother and uses him as a shield, putting him in front of the blade. That way the boy is sliced in half and screams in pain. Looks like those two will never die. For heaven's sake. Mara isn't worried about her children. She's afraid they'll die and leave her alone to face the young master. Blocking the goth girl's attack, he says he's having a lot of fun. As he's dying, the boy begs not to be abandoned and repeats that he wishes he could stay longer with his mother. Trying to strike Lord Rabis, the girl extends those disgusting arms, but he blocks the slime and her sword attacks. He had already dealt with the boy and realizes that the woman's body is damaged. Even if he cut that umbilical cord, he still wouldn't know how to remove the slime from inside his sister. Realizing that time was running out, he says he needs to end this quickly. He would have to risk everything and ends up grabbing the blade, pulling the girl close to his body. Then he holds her tightly. The boy had completely immobilized her and then bites the goth girl. That was to drain all her power, and he does it right in front of that demon. Afterward, he releases her completely drained and the goth girl collapses like a doll. He had absorbed as much power as possible, and now at full strength he charges toward the witch. She tries to block the attack with her slime, but he's far too fast and cuts through all the tentacles. Desperate, she asks why he won't just die once and for all. Even though he had recovered much of his power, this body was still fragile and seemed to be reaching its limit. He could feel his bones cracking, but he wasn't going to give up. He would do anything to save his precious sister. Mara notices that he's focusing on that umbilical cord, and in that instant he manages to strike it with his sword, cutting the link she still had with her old body. She starts cursing, asking how he managed to get there so fast. And in the next moment he's already right in front of her, preparing another attack. With surprising speed, he immobilizes the girl, slamming her to the ground. He's careful not to hurt her and she asks if he really has the courage to harm his own sister's body. It's over for you, Mara, give up once and for all. She says she won't give up because if he kills her he'll also kill his precious sister. That's my final warning. If you leave on your own I'll let you live. What? You'll let me live? Yes. I am Rabis Vindica and I swear it on the honor of my own father the Demon King. She thinks there's no way he would swear in his father's name and not keep it. So she starts laughing, saying that after doing all this she'll still get away alive. Smiling, she asks if he really intends to let her escape alive, but first he must release the sword. That's exactly what he does, disintegrating the sword completely until it becomes nothing. Getting off the girl, he tells the witch to release her body. Taking a deep breath, she prepares to slip away. But she had one last card up her sleeve. She throws that slime directly at Miho's body. He already knew she was up to something, so he was ready to catch her. At the last second he grabs the disgusting slime midair. In her slimy form, Mara asks what kind of arm that is and why it looks strange. And the boy mocks her, asking if she really believed he would keep such a promise. Furious, she says he swore on his father's honor, but the boy says he only swears by his own honor and begins pulling the slime out of his sister's body. And that's how we wrap up all the chapters of this story for now. I don't know about you, but I'm really enjoying this series. If you want me to bring part 3 as soon as more chapters come out, comment the betrayed son. The true viewers watch the video until the end, and if you leave that comment I'll know you're a real subscriber. I'll leave 2 recommended videos here on the channel that I'm sure you'll enjoy. That's all for now, thanks and see you next time everyone.